but everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing the
Tampa market started to rise.
Country in Northeast Africa, precisely on the horn of Africa.
But the local plant.
All right. Happy Sunday, folks. Once again, this is WCC. I am your host, Frank, of course. This is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series. Every Sunday at 1 a.m. So I want to welcome you all this afternoon as we are about to start today's discussion. So as you come on, please share, like, subscribe, and ask others to also watch and to also subscribe to the channel so that anytime we go live, we will be able to get everybody to come and participate and be part of this great platform. And as we fight to correct the narrative. Already. So today's topic, it says, the hidden agenda of UN hate speech policy is to promote the LGBTQ plus or agenda in Africa or on the African continent or in African nations. So the hidden agenda of UN hate speech policy is to promote the LGBT gay right or gay agenda in Africa and also in other part of the world, like in African nations, because the right of other nations like the Middle East and other places, they have been protecting their citizens, their culture, their way of life, their heritage. And the UN, the so-called United Nations, have never come out with any hate speech policy. But the moment Africans began to protect their citizens, their culture, their norms, that's the time this so-called biased organization called United Nations have to come out with a policy called hate speech policy, just to make African people not to protect their citizens, their culture, and their people, but to allow European way of life on the African continent, just how they went there doing colonization and they lied to us, just how they went there doing slavery time and they lied to us. They infiltrated our society, our culture, our norms, our spirituality. They are coming back again. They are coming back again this time around to even step on our neck more and more. So today, we are going to expose the so-called biased white supremacy organization called United Nations, controlled by the United States government, along with a so-called ally, Great Britain or the EU. Why it is only on the African continent or in African nations that these so-called white supremacy will always want to exercise their so-called human rights when they are the violators of human rights in society, when they are the killers of human in society, when they are the mastermind of how people are being humiliated and dehumanized in society, when they are the head of violating human rights, when they are the head of torturing people, especially African people. They don't have regard for African people. When they are the demons, the devil in society. Why always America and her so-called selfish organization will always will always want to go on the African continent to make African people look stupid. Why always they want to destabilize always the African nations or the African continent? Why always? They will always want to practice their human right on African people, but not on other people. And what African people are doing is the same thing other nations are doing. So are you telling me the United States and her so-called ally and her so-called organization called the United Nations, are they afraid of Qatar? Are they afraid of Dubai, UAE? Are they afraid of the Asian country? Are they afraid of those people? Why in Africa, the United States always want to bully? Why in Africa, UN always want to bully? And that is why these African leaders, y'all need to withdraw all UN troops from Africa. Because DR Congo has exposed the so-called United Nations. United Nations is in DRC Congo looting and stealing the resources. At the same time, they are there supporting the proxy war and supporting the rebels with army ammunition to continue the destabilization process so that they will continue to loot our resources. We have so many deficits on the African. In fact, when you talk about hate, African people receive the most hateful messages, speeches, talk, policy in the world. Where have been the so-called United Nations? When nations are passing policy against African people, where have been the United Nations? Even in America here, when Washington, D.C. have been passing policy upon policy against black people in America here, where have been the so-called United Nations? Folks, let's continue here and see what is so-called United Nations. That's why sometimes it baffles me when I see African leaders coming to this so-called United Nations summit. A devil organization. Before I even bring that out, sorry, folks. I almost missed my line of presentation. So first of all, let me bring out a video here done by Anita. I love how she put it together. So let me start with that first. Let me start with that first. And then before we go to the so-called article brought up by the United Nations, craziness. And we are not going to take it. We are not going to take it because the United Nations is a BS. The video I'm about to show, I'm going to use it as an introduction. All right, I'm going to show two videos if possible. But the first video is done by one of our sisters called Anita. I want to use that as my thesis, all right, or premise. And then before bringing out the so-called United Nations policy, and then see what they have in there against African people, just for African people, so that we can allow America and Europe to go on the African continent to pollute our brothers. Because the United States and EU and our so-called UN have an agenda on African people always. Once a colonizer will always be a colonizer. Don't get that twisted.
religious, but we all know that I'm no longer religious, but we all know that part of the scripture that says the devil comes to unalive, steal, and destroy. You see, Black people and people of color globally have started to take a second look into history and the actions of them palm-colored folks. And what we are starting to see now is that there is only one race of people who have done the three aforementioned things that we can find in the scriptures that is supposed to be the work of the devil, to unalive, steal, and destroy. And it's the palm-colored folks. Globally, they have unalived, stolen from, and destroyed cultures, standard of living, etc., of various cultures and races of people. And even in 2023, we still see them unaliving, stealing from, and destroying people. Now, for the most part, the majority of us are aware of the depopulation agenda that these people have, right? And how their main target is the continent of Africa. And they have been on this agenda for a very long time, from like way back during colonization and slavery even. They eradicated millions of us. Only in Congo, 15 million people were unalived there during colonization and slavery in the Congo. The Herero people are there, and what they did to them, they carried out various genocides left, right, center here on the continent during colonization and slavery. We have even seen videos of them coming out and confessing, talking about, yes, they really do want to get rid of us. This video I did a couple of weeks ago is a good example. This man was talking about how they injected Africans with HIV. If you want to check this video out, it's linked down below in the description. But now on to today's video, which is still on the depopulation agenda and how these people are obsessed with getting rid of Africans. Check out these videos and I'll meet you guys at the end.
Imagine never having to pay an electric bill again. And it won't cost you anything up front. The government is supporting this.
To this day, it remains the official policy of the American government. It has not changed. It may not be implemented by Trump, but it remains the same. That the purpose of the foreign policy in Africa was to reduce the population. So to give aid to countries in Africa, not clean water and schooling and things like that, but contraception and in order to shrink the population of Africa, because they have great mineral resources there.
That sounds diabolical.
It is, yes.
That sounds like something conceived in the mind of Margaret Sanger.
Yeah, definitely. And so at the time, Kissinger and those involved with the Carter administration wanted to shrink the population, make sure that the Africans do not develop and do not use the resources for themselves, because we in the States, we need them. There is a concerted effort of foreign powers to control the population of Africa. Africa is a huge continent, could feed thousands more people, but the policies of the West, especially in Europe. For example, between 1990 and the year 2000, the United States, Canada, and Europe contributed about $6 billion in contraceptives, not to help the people, not to give clean water, clean food. That is
not to fight malaria, for example.
No, of course, perish the thought, never. Yeah. Let them die. That's the whole idea.
We discovered that the vaccine they were using was actually a fertility regulating vaccine. The WHO had spent almost 20 years investigating from 1972 to 1992. This is funded by WHO, developed, and then disappears off the market. And the first time it appears is in 1993 in South America. They could clandestinely sterilize women without telling them that the injection they're giving them is not the normal tetanus, but rather a fertility regulating tetanus that they had produced. Very evil. And an organization of this stature behaving like this would tell you that it would be a madman who would believe them if they came back the next time. Now, the kind of pictures we see, or what we see in clinical practice, if women have been given these vaccines, is an increase in idiopathic infertility, where you have a normal man and a normal woman, you investigate them for infertility. They're totally normal, but they won't conceive a child. And those are usually the ones with very high levels of the anti-HCG antibodies. The other thing we notice is irregular periods for women who are trying to conceive. We also notice that there is an increase in failed pregnancies, or what we call blighted ovum. Women who conceive, and when you do your first ultrasound, maybe 7-8 weeks, you find an empty sac. The baby never formed because something was attacking the placenta as it tried to form. And then a lot of threatened pregnancies, threatened with early bleeding, bleeding in early pregnancies, and then some strange outcomes of pregnancies like premature labor, premature rupture of membranes, babies dying in the womb, and premature separation of the placenta. So those are the kind of things that you see in clinical practice.
At this point, it is safe to say that as long as these people exist, we are not safe. As a matter of fact, nobody is safe, or, talking about Black people right now. We are not safe. Not even Mother Nature is safe. We see what they are doing to her. And that's why Mother Nature is reacting the way she is, increasing the heat, right? Mother Nature is like, before you will kill me, I will kill you. Mother Nature is like, I was here before you came. You cannot send me away before you. Mother Nature is like, oh, this is a tree you want to back on. You want to pick a fight with me. Okay, come at me then. Let's see who wins. Mother Nature is like, you met me here, not the other way around. You would leave, but I will still be here. Not be you they run this town, and me. I'm the one running the show. Mother Nature is like, you are here because I let you be here, but you are messing around, so you are definitely going to be finding out. But like I said, nobody is safe. And this racism issue that we have now in our modern time, which is the cause of all of this issue that we are having, right? It's never dying out. It's never dying out because the racists are passing their racism on to the next generation. And that's why we have it going on. It's a vicious circle that seems like it's never going to have an end. So as long as we have them, we're always going to have those ones that have the racist mindset because they picked it up from their fathers and their mothers or grandparents. And we're always going to be their main target. Yes, they attack other people as well, but Black people, African people are their primary targets, their primary concern. They want us out of here with the speed of light for various reasons. One, our resources here on the continent, they want to have full access to it. Two, we are biologically more superior than these people. Let's call a spade a spade. Even them and their scientists, they say it, right? Hell, they're even talking about it in their news. Check out this video and I'll meet you guys after.
Richard King reveals that the core of the human brain is the locus coeruleus, which is a structure that is black because it contains large amounts of neuromelanin, which is essential for its operation. 2, Black infants sit, crawl, and walk sooner than whites. 3, Carol Barnes notes that human mental processes are controlled by melanin, that same chemical which gives Blacks their superior physical and mental abilities. 4, some scientists have revealed that most whites are unable to produce melanin because their pineal glands are often calcified or non-functioning. Pineal calcification rates with Africans are 5 to 15%, Asians 15 to 25%, and Europeans 60 to 80%. This is the chemical basis for the cultural differences between Blacks and whites. And 5, melanin endows Blacks with greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities, something which cannot be measured based on Eurocentric standards. End quote. Let that sink in. Melanin endows Black people with greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities.
You won't believe what Elon Musk did inside the walls of this building you see behind me.
So you see the video, right? This is from their news. They are telling their people this. So they know, they're very much aware of how different we are, that we have stuff that they don't. And you definitely know they hate the facts. So not only do we have these resources here on the continent, we biologically have stuff that they don't even have. So of course they see us as a threat. When you look at how these people have been acting for centuries now, they've been acting diabolically like this. You just know they are never going to change. So I'm not even expecting them to. So since they are not going to change, what we need to do is make sure that we follow them accordingly. Eat with them with a very long spoon if we must eat with them in the first place, right? I would rather we don't eat with them. But since we're in this so-called global village, So for political, economical reasons, we have to eat with them. My say is we should make sure we are eating with them with a very, very, very long spoon. When it's avoidable, don't eat with them. But if you must eat with them, use a very long spoon. And if only our so-called leaders had this same mindset as well, it will save us a lot of trouble. This fictional kumbaya world that the majority of our people think we live in does not exist. The sooner we come to that realization unanimously, the better for us all and our continued survival on this plane. So, of course, they want to get rid of us because they have compared us biologically and they see that we do not compare. They have seen that biologically they cannot compete with us. They have seen that where we are in the genetic pool, they never born them. So they see us as a threat. They see our existence as a threat to theirs. I saw a video some time back. It's just unfortunate I don't have that video saved and I cannot find that video. I would have loved to incorporate it into this video. In this video, they were talking about, it was in the news, right, in one of their channels. They were talking about how shocked they were that we here on the continent are not getting unalived by the Rona like they were getting unalived by the Rona. So you definitely know that for a group of people that see themselves as superior, they are very pissed at the fact that there is some other group of people out there, which is the Black people, that are biologically superior to them. And this is something they admit themselves. You see what the guy said on the news, right? The clip we played earlier. You know, I saw a comment underneath their video, and this person was saying that if they are talking about this in public, that Black people should be worried. If they are letting themselves know that, see, these Black people are more superior than you biologically, there is an agenda there that they're trying to send, a message they're trying to send to their people, because why is that even on the news? And if you guys paid close attention to that video very well, you would notice that even though in the reports, they mentioned other races as well, but they specifically were comparing themselves with Black people. Yes, they mentioned other races, but they did not compare themselves with those races. They specifically were comparing with us, Black people. So you just know that these facts bother them so much that they don't even compare with other people. They're comparing with only us. It doesn't matter what the numbers say for other races of people. For them, it's what does the numbers say for Black people and what is ours saying. That's all that matters. So biologically, they see us as a threat. Number two is that they also want to have access to our resources, right? So for these people, getting rid of Black people is a win at multiple ends. You get rid of the biological threats to our existence. And two, you get rid of the people that is going to stop us from taking the resources in Africa because we want to have full ownership of the resources there. And these people are on that land. They are going to stop us from taking it because it's theirs. So let's eradicate the owners so we can claim ownership. And that's what this whole depopulation agenda is all about. It's all about how can we get rid of these Africans. They are standing in our way. Just their existence is a threat to our superiority. Plus, they are living on a continent that we wish was ours.
So, in our work in HLI, we denounced this reality to make the Africans aware that they have to defend themselves against the influence of foreign powers.
Is it just the United States, or do you believe that China is also playing a role in jockeying for the resources of Africa?
China is playing a major role because China is buying property in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in Mozambique, which is a Portuguese-speaking language country, they when Portugal was in charge of Mozambique, they used to export rice. Now they are importing rice from China because they cannot produce. The socialism has wrecked the production of rice, and the Chinese come and buy farms. So about almost a third of Mozambique belongs to China. So I was in other countries of Africa, the same reality. In South Africa, the Chinese are buying property, buying land in Africa. So and they send their own workers, the Chinese workers. They don't employ people over the place. They send their own workers to populate and to live in the place.
This is the world's richest man-verified hair growth method, which allows you to regain a full head of hair. Back in
How to escape the heat.
All right. There was a question here. Let me see if I can get back to that question from I think from Emma. All right. All right. Let me see here. All right. So this is the question, right? Ima want to know, Ima said, what is the LGBTQ agenda in Africa? Now, that's what we're about to discuss today, all right? So, sometimes in order to understand the agenda, all right, of the imperialist or America to be specific, or Europe to be specific, right? The colonizer, right? You can't read from one article or you can't watch one video and then you think you're going to get it. It's a dot. I mean, the whole relationship with Africa and Europe and America is like a puzzle. It's like a game. You have to play that game. You have to put that puzzle together before you actually understand the attitude and behavior of America towards Africa, of Europe towards Africa. It's not just one interaction with Joe Biden, and then you think everything is go and diamond between Europe, America, and Africa. Their attitude is consistent. And just by meeting with them one time and having a meal or a breakfast or a cup of tea, that does not mean that you guys or they are on the same agenda as you are. No, their agenda will always be different. So the video that I just showed is a thesis or a premise. I would say a premise to what we're about to discuss with the so-called United Nations. All right. So now, from the video that you saw, like Anita said, from the discussion, they themselves, I don't know, white people get it, but black people, we don't get it. These are people sitting on their media. It's very difficult or it's very hard for Western media to talk good about Africa or about Africans. But for them to come to say one good about Africans, that speaks volume. You have to sit back and watch and listen. Think twice. What did they say? They said they compare blacks and white in terms of nature, okay? And it said black people were superior. They said it. Black people are superior to white. They themselves said it. Black people are superior to white. They themselves said it. Black people, their melanin is like, as I'll put it in my own word, right? Something God created. It's like a gift that white people want, but they can never get a melanin. It's like a gift. But how can these people know it? We don't know it. First of all, why would they come out with sex comparison? Why would they come out to do it? That means there's a hidden agenda. Why would America and Europe always push their agenda only on African people or on African nation or on black people, but they never push it on other people? Do the study. America they always push their agenda on black people. And the agenda they push on us is not productive. It's destructive. Now, from the video you just watched, now let's get to the article of the United Nations. Another evil entity by evil people. Now, this is the United Nations right here. This is their website. This is not a propaganda, like to say we are running propaganda against the United Nations or we took fake article. No, this is on their website. Now, the United Nations says hate speech in a digital world, a critical obstacle for LGBTI people. UN Bachelet said, and they specify it LGBTI or LGBTQ and then plus. Now, the question then becomes is, when have the United Nations noticed about hate speech? When has the United Nations noticed about discrimination? Because if you check around the globe, Black people are the highest recipient of discrimination. Black people are the higher recipient of hate speeches. Black people are the least in society to be protected. What about police? What about national army? Black people are the least. So, where have been the United Nations? Why have the United Nations been silent? Black people in America here, they see America that control the UN. They see America where you have the United Nations headquarters as well. In the same United Nations here, Black people have been discriminated again. Black people have been asking for protection against equality. Black people have been asking for hate speeches law again and again. Where have been the United Nations? But because America and Europe want to continue with their agenda because they have tried and they took it on the African continent, and Africans stood against it. Africans have spoken against it. Okay? Africans have said they don't need it. It's an American thing. They should take it back to America. But America still want to push it. Then she have to pass through the United Nations. If to say the United Nations is a God, if to say the United Nations is a global entity or is a neutral entity, I dare in the United Nations America to come and tell me UN is a neutral organization. I dare the United States, because we'll give the United States numerous evidence to show to them that the United Nations is as worse in discrimination like the United States. It's as worse in hate as the United States and Europe. The United Nations is as worse as Europe and America in ignoring Black issues or African issues. So we don't even care whether the United Nations can come out with policy. We don't care. The United Nations, you can take your selfish and biased policy to Europe and America, but not on the African continent. We African, we are not going to honor these biased policies he brought. Now, let's read something here. This is what the United Nations said. In the fast-growing digital age, because it is not that they are seeing that it is not that the United Nations, the so-called United Nations, is saying that his speech is growing faster. In a fast-growing digital age, his speech can represent a critical obstacle for LGBTI. So do you see how they are fighting for these people? Since when have the United Nations have spoken or speak about an issue in DRC Congo? People die every day. You don't talk about it. But to come and promote their nasty, this deadly attitude on the African continent. Why every day people are dying in DRC Congo? In the United Nations, you are there looting the resources, stealing the resources, looking at Africans dying and calling the United Nations for help. And you say you are a peacemaker. And you are in DRC Congo stealing. You roll. You are a roll. You devil. you want to come and tell us about morality when you are the worst. Then you want to come and tell us how to live. People die in Sudan. What have you done? People die in Mali, Chad, Libya. What have you done? Take your so-called United Nations LGBT policy to America and Europe, not the African continent, and not the any black nation. We are not, we repeat, we are not going to honor that hateful policy. We are no longer in colonial period time. We are no longer in it. And I think the time for the United Nations to be dissolved is coming. Very soon. It's coming. The time for the United Nations to be dissolved is at your door. Your doom is coming. But let's continue here. Unfortunately, digital technology have provided additional avenue for hate speech. So it is not the United Nations have noticed it. When white people call African people monkeys, what have we said about that? When white people in Europe throw banana at African when they are playing soccer, what have we said about it? They throw banana at all they call monkeys. What did you say recently when a soccer player from Brazil, Venetia, when you are discriminated against? What did you say, so-called United Nations? When you come and talk about LGBT, how people hate speech, this, that. No, that's not hate speech. We are saying we want to protect our culture. We want to protect our next generation. We want to protect our continent. You did it before, and we agreed to you. You call less human being. You call inferior. You call 3/5 of a lesser human being. You say we got low IQ. Because for each time you come, we agree to you. Now this time around, you can carry your so-called humanity on the other side of the world. Let's continue here. UN Right Chief Michelle told participants, which include organizers from the LGBTI core group, minister, senior official, and members of the media. The high-level discussion at the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly aimed to address how different stakeholders can contribute to any hate speech against LGBTI. People on social media platform and in traditional media. Look at this nonsense. Traditional media. Do you know what she's talking about? Traditional media? This is Africa now. This is Africa she's talking about now. Where people are teaching their people in the very local dialects, local languages, so that the message can get to their people. This is what they are talking about, traditional media. Really? When on the African continent, we have deficits of safe drinking water. We don't have it. And then you leave it and come and tell about LGBT for our brothers to go and bear their butt down so that Europeans can come and look through their butthole. Is that a kind of right to support our society? Why can't you go to the Middle East? Why can't you go to Qatar, to Dubai? Why can't you go to Asia and go do it there? Why can't you go preach your right there? You have never done it, only on the African continent. As well as ensure support for victims. Who are the victims? LGBT, people that chose to live their life the way they want to live. America, you can keep your culture. Don't take it to the African continent. That your nasty culture, do not take it there. Europe, your nasty culture, do not take it there. If you take this as hate speech, then so be it. I think you should take your weapons and go shoot the entire Africa. Go and bomb the entire Africa. Then we will know you're serious. You raw on the African continent, stealing our resources, creating proxy war. You don't see that as human rights. You don't see that as violent against African people. But when we speak for our right, when we speak for the protection of our culture, our life, the next generation. And then you see that as hate. That's not hate. When your own African president called African nation shithole, what did you say, UN? When your own African president called African people all kind of names, insignificant. You look at a continent, you look at a people that you call it insignificant. What did you, that's one of the most hateful speech you can ever say, insignificant people. A whole continent, you call it insignificant. What did you say, United Nations? That was George Bush that called African people insignificant. What did you say? Oh, so when we speak against George Bush war, then that hate speech. Why can't you tell America for America to protest polygamy? Say you want to protect speeches, you want to protect people, let America protest polygamy. Let America practice polygamy. Tell the American government or you, so-called United Nations, put it in your hate speech that in Europe, in America, polygamy should be practiced. Let's see where Washington, D.C. will honor it. Nonsense. Let's continue here. The meeting struck conversation around the right to free speech versus lesson to hate. That's not hate. If you don't know, that's not hate. It was the same thing we did when you came. We were so kind. We were so cool. We were so welcoming to you. We welcome you. You enslave us. You came. We were kind again. We welcome you. You colonizer. You came back again. We welcome you. You brought neo-colonialism. We welcome you. You start killing our leaders. You start undermining our leaders, our democracy. You came again, we welcome you. You brought your so-called African. But your so-called African, they are on the African continent, African people are still dying. You came again, we welcome you. You said we shouldn't make farm. Europe and America will make the farm, will produce, and you supply us. We agree to you. Today, we are dying. When our African leaders say no, they said, then your people will starve. Then you put sanction. And then our people, our leaders now, they're confused because they don't know where to start. They have to succumb to you. You have done so many things to us to hurt us. So we are going to come to you in any way that we can speak for you to get it into your score. So when we say into your score, you call that hate speech, then so be it. Let's continue here. Hate speech is any kind. So now the United Nations is defining hate speech. What hate speech is. All right. Hate speech is any kind of communication. I even love this. Their definition. You see, these people, they will be doing things until they will put themselves outside. They say hate speech is any kind of communication. Black people have received the worst kind of communication from Europe and America. Black people, African people around the world, around the globe, have received the worst kind of communication from Europe and America. So hate speech is any kind of communication in speech, writing, or behavior. Oh, what have you people not done to us? You people have the worst kind of attitude towards African people, but yet they stay. We don't pay mind to those attitudes, but now we're going to pay mind to it. So let's continue with the definition here. In behavior, in speech, writing, or behavior that attack or uses pregatory or discriminatory language. Oh, when Donald Trump called African people shithole, what did you say? Now you see your own definition you get about hate speech. When George Bush called African people insignificant. Oh, when Europe and America calling African monkeys, gypsy. What are those not his speech? Are those not any kind of communication they've been doing against African people? When a situation happened in Ukraine, what languages did they use on African people? Even your media say African people, the only area war supposed to take place is Africa and the Middle East. Is that not his speech? What did you say? They said they prefer their dog, their animal to be safe, to be on the train, to be on the buses, than black people, than African people. Is that not attitude or behavior of hate? Come on, man. Look, UN, take your biased, devilish attitude on the other side. Take it back to America and Europe, because your definition, it does not fit. It's just like coming to Africa, telling African people about democracy by the people, for the people, and of the people. But yet they stay, when the people elect their own president by the people, for the people, of the people, you go against that democracy and kill that leader, honor that leader, and create proxy war and make sure that leader is removed. And then come by, pledge your own government, and then tell the people, we want to provide democracy for you. That's the same nonsense you just did here in your definition. Or you think we will not break it down? The thing about it is easier for African people. It's easier for black people, because these are things we face on a daily basis by Europe, from Europe and America. And you're coming over a definition that we can see through with our eyes. I think you should go and redefine his speech. Go and redefine his speech. Let's continue here. So they say discriminatory language with reference to a person or group on the basis of who they are. Black people have been discriminated based on their color. What have you said about it? Come on, UN. What were you thinking coming out with this definition? People look upon down on us based on our skin color, based on because we're coming from Africa, or we're coming from black nations, or our way of life, our culture. People insult or look down on us. And then you come up with a definition to say who they are. And she continued to say, let's continue. Say, quoting the UN framework and plan of action for stamping out his speech, introduced in June of this year. So you've been sleeping. This is why we African will not honor UN, will not honor this definition or this policy. We are not going to honor it. So United Nations, get ready and take your whole UN army. They're going to bomb the entire African nation, the entire African continent. We dare you to do that. But we're going to speak anytime against LGBT. We will speak against LGBT. We will not sit down and keep silent. We will speak against LGBT. Do you want to destroy our society? Do you want to destroy the African continent? You did it through enslavement. You did it through colonization. You did it through neocolonialism. It's not going to happen again. We will speak against any air policy. As long as we know it's against Africa and African people, we will speak against it in any way, in any word we can use. Let's continue here. In a UN strategy and plan of action, the Secretary General declared that around the world, we are seeing a disturbing groundswell of xenophobia, racism. So it is now that you know that racism is around the world. When African people have been calling on UN, have been crying, have been talking, so it is now that you know racism. It is now that you know xenophobia and intolerance. It is not that you know there's a war called intolerance. It is now that you so-called UN. It is now that you know there's a war called racism. Let's continue here. So, LGBT youth are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide in the United States alone compared to heterosexual youth. So, so the question then becomes, who cares? Because most of these people you call LGBT that committed suicide, most of them, what you're not telling her is their guilt. It is their guilt. You chose a lifestyle and you become guilty of it. And then you want to put it on people who are heterosexual or who are not LGBT. You chose a lifestyle. And most of those people that are committing suicide, you so-called United Nations, what you did not tell is most of those people have HIV. And depression killed them. They cannot learn to see people talk among people because their life has changed. They kill themselves. What you fail to tell her is they have a leaking butt. Their butt leak. Anytime they say it, so they don't say it in public well. They say it and their butt be leaking. So these are embarrassment to them that they have to kill themselves. That's why you're not telling us here. There are a whole lot of factors, underlying factors that go on of being LGBT. Some of them carry on body transformation, and then later in their life, they begin to regret. And they don't want to see that body again. They kill themselves. Tell the people. Tell the people that's what's happening. It is not because of heterosexual that are making them to commit suicide. They are committing suicide because the lifestyle they chose. And now it's haunting them. Their own guilt make them to kill themselves. Who cares? So, UN is telling us it is because of social media. No, nobody care about LGBT. The way they want to live their life, that's it. Nobody care. But if you want to force that lifestyle on a culture, on a nation, on a continent, now this is where we're going to have it. If you want to force that lifestyle as a policy to tell African nation, we will sanction you, then that's where you cross a boundary. That's where you have crossed a boundary. This is not colonial time. If you want to force a nation to tell a nation, we will not make business with you, we don't care, then that's where you cross your boundary. That's not human rights. You're talking about human rights here, you so-called biased organization. You're talking about human rights, and you forcing a lifestyle on people? How can you force a lifestyle on people and then you call that human rights? If the people disagree, then you say they violate human rights. How can you force a lifestyle on people? I think you should go back and define the hate speech. You should go back and define human rights. Nonsense of an organization called UN. Nonsense. Let me take this out here. Now, what authority does Frank have to speak on this? It is one thing to argue against UN cynically weaponizing this and other things to dehumanize your own African sibling. Now, nobody dehumanizing African sibling here. That's the same thing that happened. This is the same thing that happened. African people became enslaved. This is the same thing that happened. African people became colonized. This is the same thing that happened. They destroy our society and they call inferior. This is the same thing that happened. They say we have low IQ. I have the authority now to answer your question. Yes, I do have the authority because I am an African. And you know why I do have the authority? Why is the United Nations, why is America only focused on Africa? Don't you know it's an agenda? Did you watch the first video? Did you watch the video that I showed? If not, after the recording, go back and watch the video. There's a reason why I showed that video. There's a reason why I show the video. So go back and watch that video. So you ask me if I have the authority. I do have the authority 100%. As long as it is anything to destroy black family, to destroy the African continent, I do have the authority. Nobody have to give me authority to speak on it. Go to your colonial master to seek the, how to call it, permission. I don't seek permission from people that enslave me, from people that colonize me. I don't seek permission from them. From people that to seek my downfall, to dehumanize the African continent, I don't seek their permission. I have the authority to speak against this. If Dr. King did not have the authority, you wouldn't have been here today. If Malcolm X did not have the authority, you wouldn't have been here today. If Nkrumah did not have the authority, I don't think Africa could have had some kind of independence. If Jomo Kenyatta, Ahmed Sekou Toure, if those people did not have the authority, if they should have sat down and wait for their colonial master to give them the authority, we wouldn't have been here today the place we are. So yes, I do have the authority. I do have the authority to speak on it. And to tell the United Nations, back off. To tell America, back off. So are you telling me people in the Middle East, they don't have the authority? They have the authority. That's why America don't carry their nonsense. That's why UN don't carry their nonsense. In Asia, are you telling me they don't have the authority? They have the authority. Do you see people preaching about LGBT in Asia, in Dubai, in Qatar, in UAE? Do you see people preaching it there? Because they have the authority. Did you watch the World Cup that just finished? They're going to World Cup in Qatar. Did you watch it? They wanted to carry that LGBT attitude. They wanted to carry on the Captain Ben to have that son. And the Qatarians said, no, we don't need it here. Did you not see some of the American soccer team protesting? Did you not see the German protesting? And the people said, no, you are not going to carry any LGBT son here. Respect our culture. So did the people not have the authority? Oh, so only African people should sit down and close their mouth. So only African people don't have authority. When things are going against them, I see. That's why in the African setting, we have a lot of neo-colonialists. Because we always say, who gave you authority? You don't have authority. So who gave the white man authority to colonize the African people? Who gave the white man the authority to enslave African people? The Chinese had the authority. That's why colonization did not take place, or even if it did not take place long. Because the Chinese had the authority, they said no. India, they had the authority. That's why it did not take place as long as in Africa. That's why colonization did not happen there. Because they had the authority, they said no. So are you we should have that colonial mindset to say who gave the authority? What is wrong with black people? Go and ask the Chinese. Did you have authority? That's why America and Europe did not colonize you. Go and ask the Indian. Who gave you the authority? And they will tell you, no one gave us the authority, but we gave ourselves the authority. If African leaders have not wake up, do you think by now Africa was going to be independent? Who gave them authority to wake up and said this is nonsense. Who gave Ottawa to some the authority to mobilize people in Haiti 1804 before Haiti get independent? Who gave the authority? You think it was France that gave them the authority to go and fight the French army? Or they themselves gave themselves the authority to fight? Who gave them the authority? Go and ask Ottawa to some. Go in Haiti and ask that question to them. You will see the kind of answer they will give you. It's like telling black people in America, yeah, Abraham Lincoln freed a slave. What a nonsense history. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. Matter of fact, this discussion was going to be short, but we're going to go into the Wagner group in Russia or Ukraine that just happened. Let me present something on it, because last week somebody asked if we are going to talk about it. Yes, we are going to talk about it today. All right. So I was going to bring another video, but because of time, I'm just going to show one video and then we get into the Russia-Ukraine situation, the Wagner, what just happened recently, because that also linked to the African continent. There are some secrets we're going to reveal today. So let's see what PLO Lumumba said. Now, to Amma, PLO Lumumba is also going to answer your question. I'm not coming at you, but I'm trying to hit on that, because not just you, a lot of people always, a lot of Africans, a lot of black people always have that thing. Who gave you the authority? Who should we seek authority from? Who should we seek permission from? All right, good. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that Wagner group today. We're going to talk about them. Very good.
The Dutch Roman law, they told us at that time that there is something called sex against the order of nature. Has nature changed? No. They told us at that time that there is something called sex against the order of nature. Has nature changed? So we must be very slow to personalize laws. We must be very slow. And these arguments that they bring about bills relating to LGBTQ, they'll never say them to the Arabs. They'll never go to Kuwait. They'll never go to Bahrain. They'll never go to Brunei. They'll never go to Saudi Arabia. They'll never go to Indonesia to tell them. It is Africans who they think are tails to be wagged. So on this issue, the government of the Uganda and the people of Uganda, I am with them 100%. There is no freedom outside of the law.
How do you balance the decision or the right to choose?
Choose what? The choice must be limited according to the mores of a different community. And in any event, should we be talking about LGBTQ when we have no food on the table? And the danger, including with you journalists, is that now when you interview people, you have your own position that you want to impose on us. We refuse. United Nations Human Rights Council, is it some god? Is it not a body that is composed of human beings who have created a body where some are permanent members and some are not permanent members? Remember, in matters of morality, numbers don't matter. It is the mores. You may disagree with me, but I'm telling you without batting an eyelid and unapologetically that some of us oppose LGBTQ, and you who are anchors, I'm now telling you, because I've seen it with other anchors from other parts of the world, you have a position and you want to impose on us. We refuse. Yours is to midwife, to ensure that my views, if others have a different view, you go and interview them. But from where I sit, I oppose LGBTQ with every ounce in my life.
Including that they must be killed.
Who said that?
Now, I want to mention something here. You see, and this is what I've been talking about, the so-called African reporters, the so-called African journalists. They all report based on what mainstream media says. Like this reporter, I'm sorry to say it, I'm not really going to her too much because she's a female. But this reporter sitting in there, she never even read the bill that Uganda came out with. She's taking a narrative from mainstream media. Look at what she's saying to the professor. So do you agree everything that people should be killed? That just to tell you, she never read that bill. She never read it. She just sat down, listened to mainstream media, or maybe she was even paid. Or she's been paid by mainstream media. And then came with the same narrative, so including. So it is only in Africa that that bill has been passed to kill people. The entire Middle East, Qatar, Dubai, UAE, other places. Bill have been passed, they kill people. Why have the United? So are you telling me those people are not human beings? Those people are not part of the human race? Or it is only Africa that they will carry their nonsense? And this is why some of these African reporters have problem with them.
They must be killed. No, there is nobody who has said that. I want you to read the law. They have not said that. Nobody has said that.
Finally, I'm looking forward to deliver the lecture. I know you don't want to get into the content of the letter, but there's also people in South Africa who are saying, because the EFF took a stand and called President Museveni not to sign this homosexuality bill into law, how can they invite you?
You know, it is tragic that we are living in a world where there is a competition of ideas. And then you are telling people, only invite people who think like you think. I find that intellectually insulting. I know many people, many friends with whom I do not share views on many things. But when we disagree in an agreeable manner. If you are inviting people, you want to associate with people who think the way you are, then that is the unanimity of the grave and the graveyard on the cemetery, and that is unfortunate. Democracy is a competition of ideas, and I don't impose your ideas on you, and you don't impose your ideas on me. Those who think like that really are people who defy definition.
Oh, sorry. And now I muted myself. But let me see here. What's the question? There was a question here. Okay, I will still go back to it. So Iman said, so he's talking about, this person is talking about LGBT. Okay? Are they not facing the same repression and more from the state as you? What kind of repression? I want you to name some of those repression that LGBT are facing along with Black people. So to answer your question, no, they are not. Now let me read the second aspect of the question. Do they not face the same oppression? What do you understand oppression? Do you want to compare what Black people, African people have been through with LGBT, so-called LGBT? This wet agenda that they have gotten few Black people and put them in it and they put in it, and you call it oppression? Do you know the meaning of oppression when it comes to comparing Black oppression with LGBT? Who oppressed LGBT? Who oppressed LGBT? So are you telling me Black people oppress LGBT? What power Black people have to oppress LGBT? We're talking about power here now. What power Black people have to oppress LGBT? Other than Black people talking about protecting their culture, what power do they have? Other than African people telling America, keep your culture there and don't bring your culture here. What power do we have? We have power. Do we have power? Then why, when Black people took a stand in Uganda, America said they will cut off aid from Uganda? That is what you call power. So right there, it is LGBT that have the power, that exercising the power on Uganda. It is LGBT that exercising the power on African people. You want to say power? Who is oppressing their friend? LGBT is oppressing Black people. LGBT is oppressing African people because African people said they refuse. They refuse to practice it, and LGBT went ahead to say we will cut off aid. So who has the power? Who is oppressing their friend here? Look, this is not a question. I don't want to waste my time on this. I'm suspecting you. Who is oppressing? LGBT is the one oppressing African people because African people said, no, we don't need it. And LGBT said, if you don't need it, we're going to sanction your country. We're going to sanction your continent. We're going to call off aid. Then who is oppressing who? Do you understand what they call oppression? Look, we are talking about race here. We are talking about race. There's a reason why I played that video. You know what? I'm going to play another video here because maybe you don't get it. And if you don't get it, I'm sorry. I got to go on to the next topic because if you don't get it, I'm sorry. I got to go on to the next topic. But let me play something here. For that, I'm not going to leave it out. I want to leave it out, but let me bring it up. I'm not going to leave it out. Let me play something here, okay? Because we're running out of time, I just want to leave it out and get to the Russia-Ukraine situation. But let me play it.
Or suffer the consequences of the United States. So what are the Africans actually saying? African Americans? No. Africans are livid right now. They're furious over the Biden administration trying to push their movement onto them or suffer the consequences of the United States. So what are the Africans actually saying about this? Check it out.
Okay, first of all, let's get this straight. United States, USA, whatever the f you guys call yourself, you cannot go around the word and start bullying people to do stuff because you guys are okay with all this bullshit and nonsense. Africa is not your fucking country. If you want to accept all this LGBTQ stuff going on here, that's fine. That is fine. That don't give you the right to go try to bully other country to do this fucking thing. There are culture in Africa, Europe. That is just simple.
Don't get lost in the chaos of commercial real estate data. Make a move to Crexi Intelligence.
Is she wrong? Let's be honest here. How would you feel if a bully came into your house and tried forcing their new religion and their rules in your home? This is how they feel, and this is what they're saying. Do you agree with them? Let me know in the comments down below. Check this one out.
Why are they going to Africa to beg Africans and to force Africans to accept homosexuality in Africa? This is a big insult to black African countries. Why are they not going to Saudi Arabia to ask them to accept homosexual? Americans will never wake up and go to Morocco and tell them to accept homosexual. Americans will never wake up and go to Tunisia and tell them to accept homosexual. But they can wake up and go to Ghana, Congo, Togo, Guinea-Bissau, Gambia, Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, Kenya, all these African countries, they can wake up and go there and ask them to accept homosexual. It's a big insult to black Africanhood. I want to send this message to Americans, that Americans, UK, and all European prime ministers, stop insulting black Africans by going to Africa and telling us to accept homosexuality in our countries. If you accept homosexuality in America, that is America. We don't have nothing to do with that. That's your business. But you can't go to my Africa and to ask for my black Africans to accept homosexuality in Africa.
What do you think about that? But the United States government has a lot of money, and that's what they use. They think they can pay African leaders to take bribes and go against the citizens' rights. That's happened.
So right there, that's LGBT speaking right there. Because they have a lot of money, they can go to Africa and bully Africa. Now, the other speaker said, why can't they go to Tunisia? Because you know that's Arab country. That's the north. They cannot go to Tunisia. They cannot go to Egypt. They cannot go to Morocco. But they go to West Africa. Because you know what? West Africa is where the mineral resources are. West Africa is where they have their interest. So, Ima, what we're saying here is deeper than what you are looking at here. Nobody hates LGBT. But the agenda is what we hate. Let me tell you, that will make this clear. Nobody hates them. They can live their life the way they want to live. That's their business. But the agenda is what we hate. And we will discuss that agenda. And we will never accept that agenda. Take it to the bank.
For centuries, but not so fast. They tried it once in 2016 with Obama and again in 2023. Here's what the president of Uganda, Museveni, had to say to the Obama administration back. They can pay African leaders to take bribes and go against the citizens' rights. It's happened for centuries, but not so fast. They tried it once in 2016 with Obama and again in 2020.
Sexuality in America. And to ask for money.
You think about that. But the United States government has a lot of money, and that's what they use. They think they can pay African leaders to take bribes and go against the citizens' rights. It's happened for centuries, but not so fast. They tried it once in 2016.
So this is what I was saying, so you couldn't hear me, right? Now, I was responding again. So do you see who have the money here? And you want to say LGBT oppressed, but are the same as black? LGBT is the one that have the money. So listen to what the gentleman is saying. Let me make this clear. Nobody should think that we hate LGBT. That's their business. That's their life. What we hate to the gust is the agenda behind our whole movement of LGBT. And the agenda is to destroy Africans. It's to destroy the African continent. That agenda is depopulation. And that's what we hate. And we will not support that agenda. We will not support LGBT. Nobody hate them. That's American way of life. That's European way of life. They can come and live in America and live in Europe. Why can't the United States go to Morocco and go try that nonsense and go talk about LGBT? They will run them out. If any United States official I dare them to go to Morocco. They will run them out. I dare them to go to Algeria. They will run them out. I dare them to go to Egypt to go speak that nonsense. They will run them out. But only in Africa, West Africa specifically, they go and do that nonsense because it is West Africa, they have the resources. They need the resources. So it's always West Africa that we go to try that nonsense. So nobody hates LGBT. It's the agenda and those that are behind it. It is about LGBT. Do you think that America have time for LGBT or black LGBT? They don't have time for you, black America. Then you talk about LGBT. You think they get your time? So they might use the few black to push their agenda. That is neo-colonialism. And that's the same thing we're talking about here.
With Obama and again in 2023. Here's what the president of Uganda, Museveni, had to say to the Obama administration back in 2016 and now to the Biden administration in 2023.
The world. What I can tell you about steps the United States might take in response is that we are undertaking a review of our relationship with Uganda in light of this decision.
The outsiders cannot dictate to us. This is our country, this is our society, this is our future. It is not anybody's future. And the outsiders will have to live with us, or if they don't want, they take their aid and we shall. Uganda is very rich, we don't need aid. In fact, aid is part of the problem. Nobody is hunting them. But because they come and want to force us to say homosexuality, oh yeah, that's how you get now a backlash. They are the ones who are provoking all of this.
We have grave concerns with the passage of the Anti-Homosexuality Act, AHA, by the Parliament of Uganda yesterday, and increasing violence targeting LGBTQI+.
Fellow men, this is just LGBT cancer to people. The Bible, it says it's really helping.
Let me know in the comments. Listen to what these two young ladies had to say. Roll the tape.
Americans, Africans, we are tired.
We are really tired.
At first, you came very well in
with
peace.
Your Christianity.
With your Christianity, we took it and it's really helping us.
It is working. Some of us, we are staunch Christians now, and God is working miracles in our life.
Now you're eating your own words. You're saying that you brought family plan. And yet in the Bible, it says that
God has made us to go and produce and fill the world.
But now you're bringing family planning. The family planning, which is bringing cancer to people.
We are burying people.
We are burying people.
Continuous bleeding.
Continuous bleeding.
Women can bleed anytime.
We are taking it. From there, we are still healing that wound. You're bringing the LGBT sort of, which I don't know, this homosexual.
So what is your problem?
You are telling us we are supposed to produce and multiply. Again, here you're saying that we're supposed to sleep with our fellow women and fellow men.
This is just
what type
too
of
much.
madness is that one?
And you want to force this thing in Africa. Can't you leave Africans alone? We see your eyes are focused on Uganda. Uganda, we don't tolerate these things because you are a God-fearing country. We don't want this kind of nonsense in our country. Please help us. Let it remain in your country.
In your country.
Now, why don't you leave us? If you see how our sons here are dying because of homosexual, intestines come out. Children are bleeding from behind. No, that's too much.
This isn't just one country on the continent that feels this way.
I'm a 24-year-old multimillionaire thanks to this one little-known recession-proof industry.
This is the continent that feels this way. Billions of people. The president of
or the black men gay. Well, listen, the reason they want to homosexualize Africa is to bring about the demise of African people. Because if nobody's reproducing, my sister, if you're not reproducing because you got a girlfriend, and I'm not reproducing because I got a husband, where is the new African life? Where is the next generation? The LGBT agenda is not about gay liberation or gay sex or family rights. It is about the extermination of African people.
That's a serious allegation-analyzed theory, and it's not Floxy Nazi nihilification of a party, say a Democrat or a Republican party, even though it seems like a far-right extreme conservative conspiracy theory of a hate group. But it's not. So I'm going to see your theory over there, my friend, and I'm going to raise you another. An indoctrination without reproduction is dead on arrival. Because if you can't produce, they die. That's just what I think. Tell me what you think, and we can figure this out.
Now, I love the last part he said. Indoctrination without reproduction is dead on arrival. Now, do you understand the agenda behind it? Do you understand? Indoctrination without reproduction is dead on arrival. Take 100 people and put it on an island. So men, take 100 men, put it on an island. Take 100 women, put it on an island. And then take 100 men and women, okay? 50-50 or so. 50 men, 50 women. Put it on an island, all right? 50 men, 50 women, put it on different island. And then 100 men, different island. 100 women, different island. And then wait for the next 25 years or the next 50 years. The 100 men on that island will decline because they are not reproducing. They will die and perish. The 100 women on that island will die and perish, and our island will be gone. The 50 men and the 50 women on the other island will reproduce, and they will grow in numbers. And our 50 men and 50 women on our island will not emerge towards the island where they had the 100 men that die, the 100 women that die because they fail to reproduce. That's the agenda here. And that's why we, especially West Africa, we are very critical. Because this whole so-called of an agenda is only mostly in West Africa, like mostly to the black area. What kind of nonsense is that? Let's continue here. So we are not speaking because we want to speak, or because we have nothing to say, or because we have loud mouth. Yes, if we have loud mouth, we're going to use our loud mouth to liberate us. We're going to use our loud mouth to speak the truth. We're going to use our loud mouth to tell Europe and America, this is not colonial time. This is not 1800 or 1600 time. We're going to tell them enough is enough. You have reached your limit. There is a limit to everything. Now you want to talk about LGBT being oppressed. Do you think America will get time for black LGBT? Go and ask them the discrimination they face when they go to hospital, when they go for checkup, when they go to check their butt, when their butt are leaking. Go and ask them and see the discrimination they face. When they have bar on their butt, go and ask them the discrimination, the insult they get. They may not tell you, but the one that really want to be, they will tell you. You think America have time for them? As long as they push the American agenda, that's it. Do you see the whole LGBT movement taking place in other parts of Africa? A specific area in Africa, they are pushing the LGBT. Are you not getting it? You think we're stupid here? Let's continue to the Russia situation. Now you took most of my time days because I have to go a little bit in detail. But anyway, that's it. Revolutionary, we don't get angry. We keep pushing. So we are not angry. We just pushing. We just teaching. We were teach and we were exposed. Now, folks, recently we had in Russia and Ukraine about the Wagner Group, right? And mainstream media said Putin was being overthrown. That's what Obama said. Democracy is failing because people are losing trust in the media. Democracy is not failing because of that. Democracy is failing because democracy lies. Western democracy is a thief. And people no longer believe in the mainstream media because they lie. But let's see what happened with this whole issue. We are WCC. Let's see here. So first of all, let's understand who are these or this group or who are these people, the Wagner, right? Let's understand who are they. Okay? And we will see some of the plots that went on in there. Let's see here.
Who is Yevgeny Prigozhin? Some know him as Putin's chef, others as a warlord in Africa, or Russia's most powerful mercenary boss. But what really is his story? And why has he turned against Russia? How did he become so powerful? As he vows to topple Russia's defense leadership, what will be the Wagner Group's fate? Our next report telling you all about it.
This is the story of Yevgeny Prigozhin, a high-profile, provocative mercenary leader. He's the boss of the private Wagner Group, which has been fighting Russia's war against Ukraine. His story in Moscow dates back decades. Prigozhin comes from the same hometown as President Vladimir Putin, St. Petersburg. While Putin rose from KGB insider to Russian leader, Prigozhin served a decade-long prison sentence that started when he was 18. Why was he put behind bars? For robberies he carried out with his friends. Once he was released, Prigozhin started out modestly, selling hot dogs. The year was 1990. The Soviet Union was in its death throes. St. Petersburg was on the brink of monumental transformation. Great riches awaited those shrewd or violent enough to seize them. Prigozhin had his goals set higher than fast food, and he knew how to get there. He quickly began racking up clout in the hospitality industry. He first opened a wine shop, then a restaurant. By the time Putin became president, Prigozhin was helping serve his state dinners. This earned him the nickname Putin's chef. Putin helped Prigozhin open a school lunch factory on generous state-funded loans. Prigozhin also owned at least part of Concord Management and Consulting. In March 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, more new opportunities arose for Prigozhin. Putin denied that regular Russian troops had been involved in the annexation. Kremlin began to think how to make a stronger case. And this is what it came up with. It looked for private military groups to do its dirty work, despite it being illegal in Russia. Several groups appeared that seemed to coordinate their actions with the defense ministry. They operated at an arm's length from the government, but they wreaked havoc all the same. Prigozhin's Wagner Group became the most prominent of them. By 2015, his companies had won major contracts worth more than $1 billion to feed its army. Prigozhin's swift rise to power started to irritate some officials at the defense ministry, and as his operations expanded to other countries, the tensions only grew further. By 2018, Prigozhin's activities had spread to at least 10 countries in Africa. He offered security and arms training services, secured mining rights and other business opportunities. Prigozhin ran this worldwide network from an office in St. Petersburg. This wasn't far from the place he had started his restaurant 2 decades ago. Although he had no official position, Prigozhin was now a frequent attendee at high-level meetings related to defense contracts. He became a tool for Putin to meddle abroad while denying any involvement. It was Russia's invasion of Ukraine when denial went down the drain. In September 2022, Prigozhin announced triumphantly that he had founded the Wagner Group back in 2014. The admission came after a viral video showed him inside a prison. Inmates had assembled as he pitched the opportunity. Prigozhin's ambitions kept growing. Now, well over a year into the war, they've gone through the ceiling. He had started raging against Russia's defense ministry. At times, he said they were trying to steal his victory. At other times, he questioned their leadership. And now he claims the Russian army has killed soldiers. He wants to oust the military leadership. Now pull out of the Wagner contract. Earlier in February, French President Emmanuel Macron had pointed towards this ticking bomb. He had described the group as life insurance of failing regimes in Africa. He said that African nations would eventually stop turning to Wagner as it only sows misery. Has that time finally come?
Okay, be with me, all right? We're going to get to a place. Now, we know who these people are or who this group is, right? Now we know when they was founded and how they was founded, right? And who they are, right? Now, the issue here is, well, I'm going to bring out again. We're going to take it bit by bit, and we're going to get to a point where I want us to get. So the whole, what you saw in Ukraine or in Ukraine and Russia right now with that group, it was planned. It was masterminded. So we're going to see it here. And it's all recording. We're going to watch and analyze it and see what happened, what took place. Okay. And part of this is also about Africa. All right. Part of this is also about Africa. Now, this was the very first time mainstream media reported a video I'm about to show you, reported on the Wagner Group in Ukraine, talking about victory, talking about, being on their side. Now, the question here is, why did they report on the Wagner Group? Why were they so happy about this group? Now watch. And why the Wagner Group left the battlefield? Why did they leave the battlefield? Because that's the question nobody asking. Why did they leave the battlefield? Why they left the battlefield? What happened in there? International hands are well being played. That's the same thing they do to the African continent. Proxy war. But I see here. And part of the reason why these people withdrawn or left the battlefield is also about Africa. Money was spent. Now, you understand that this Wagner Group is a private military group. It's not even the Russian Federation. They are not part of the Russian Federation. They are not part of the Russian army. All right? They are a private group. They are business, how they call it, entity. Where the money is, there where they go. Who have the higher bid, there where they go. They are prisoners. This group, they are prisoners. All right? So whosoever have the highest money, the higher bid, they go for it. So now the question is, what happened to the battlefield? Because they were never defeated, what happened? Let's watch. We're going to take it bit by bit until we get to where we're supposed to get, okay? Be with me. You know, sometimes in order to get a full story, you have to like go through a lot of stuff to actually put a puzzle together. And that's why sometimes we take a long time.
There's a nervous stalemate holding across Russia tonight with an influential military leader in exile after what looked like a coup attempt on the Kremlin was called off at the last minute. Paid mercenaries who were meant to be fighting for Vladimir Putin in Ukraine marched into Russia and within 200 kilometres of Moscow before turning back. Only an 11th-hour deal with their leader avoided a brutal conflict. But the political blow has left the Russian president looking weak in the face of an uprising of his own making.
In Russia's port city of Rostov-on-Don, celebrations.
Now, first of all, do you see the narration or the narrative of the mainstream media? Russia is weak. First of all, the war in Ukraine, it have never been fought by the Russian military, the Russian Federation. Okay? It have been fought by these private army. And yet they stay with the support of the United States military, not military, but army ammunition. They can't even defeat this private military. Okay? They could not, or they cannot defeat the private military. The Russian Federation were never fighting. They never took part in the battlefield. Since the war began, it is this private army, okay, that been carrying on all the stuff that been going on in Ukraine. All right? It is this private army. It is not the Russian Federation that been fighting. It is not the Russian army. The Russian army been relaxing. It's just like in the United States, I will use the Marine. The Marine is not a private army, but the Marine are the people that always send first, not the army, not the United States Army, right? The Marine, because the Marine comprises of different, okay? Those are the people that send first. It's not the army. The army have a lot of, white folks in it. But the Marine, they have white folks in it, but different color, different nationalities. So those are the people they sent to go kill fight. That is not to say the Marine is a private military compared to the Wagner group. No. But I'm just telling you, the Marine is almost in that situation. Okay? So, and that's how the Wagner group look like in Russia. So they are the one that have been fighting in Ukraine, not the Russian army. So all the fighting have been going on, the Russian army been relaxing. They've never been there on the war front. No. So that is to tell you the force Russia have. So let's continue here.
After being overrun and occupied, the private, mercenary Wagner army were now packing up and heading out. It was over as quickly as it had begun, less than 24 hours, but the ramifications will likely rewrite Russia's history. The man at the center of it all, Yevgeny Prigozhin, also on the move, exiled to neighboring Belarus after shaking the foundations of the Putin presidency.
This is an enormous shock to Russian politics, an enormous shock to President Putin's regime.
Prigozhin, a longtime critic of Russian defense leaders, had blamed them for a lethal attack on one of his bases on Friday. He instantly launched 25,000 troops, tanks, armor in rapid deployment for Moscow. The Russians started digging up roads to slow the convoy and even blew up its own fuel depots to stop them refueling. Wagner forces seen in counterattack here, a missile narrowly missing this Russian helicopter. It sparked panic and chaos for civilians in Rostov, railway stations packed with people trying to flee. Within hours, Prigozhin had taken control of the town.
It's 7:30. Rostov's military sites are under the control of Wagner fighters.
Prigozhin's troops had moved with lightning speed from the Ukraine front line into Russia, straight through Rostov and north, reaching just 200 kilometers from Moscow's center. But then the sudden order to stop.
We're turning back our columns and returning to our field camps.
A peace has cleared him of charges, but experts say he will not forgive or forget.
By the events of the last few days, US intelligence likely now is out trying to find where the Russian leader's next threat is coming from. Mark.
Okay, Tim, let's...
All right, now, so you see the narrative of the mainstream media, right? The Wagner group overtook Moscow, they run the city, they do this, they do that, right? But the question then is, where is the Wagner group right now? Their chief or their commander. Where is he right now? Is he staying in Russia? No, he's not in Russia. He's in Belarus right now. Now, why is he in Belarus? Belarus and Russia, they have a close tie. Belarus is in Europe, but Belarus is not part of NATO. Belarus and Russia, they have a mutual agreement. So what they are not telling you here is, why will the Wagner group go to Belarus to seek refuge? If they took Moscow, why they couldn't stay in Moscow? What they are not telling you here is, the Wagner group did not go, did not retreat because they wanted to overtake Moscow or they wanted to overthrow Putin. No, there was a reason they left the battlefield. But I just brought the mainstream media narrative so that you can see, and then before we go into it now, let's see the next video. Be with me. We're going to get to it and then see, okay, where all this is leading to. Like I said, part of it too is leading to the African continent. Now, again, remember, I'll go back again. This group is a, how they call it, private military group that go for the higher bid. All right. Now, just this year, from January to June, the United States spent $3.2 billion. Where did it go? Now, at the same time, within that same time, the issue happened. The UK Prime Minister, they spent $2.25 billion in Ukraine. Where that money is going, bear in mind, this is a private military group that go for the higher bill. They are money-making entity. So they are not just on the battlefield to die, they are there for money. Now, we're going to also see, I don't want to talk, let's continue here. But I'll keep connecting the dots so as we go on along, because we are running out of time. But be with me, bear with me, okay? So let's watch the next video. So this is how you actually get the story, because you are not going to get the full story from mainstream media. You have to put the puzzles together to bring, before you get the actual story. So let's watch the next video and see what happened, why these people left the battlefield. Was it Putin or UK or America? Let's see. Who is holding the war? Is it Putin or UK or America? Let's watch the next video.
Or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth.
Now, this is not part of Russia and Ukraine, but I want you to listen to this to see how the US play the dirty game. All right? And then I will just kind of skip it.
And make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective. And I think probably in retrospect, it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. it was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a prime minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists.
No offense, but if you still think that investing in real estate is the best way to make passive income.
And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the
to
problem.
enforce?
We can't
I mean,
even
it's
agree. We can't even
extremely-
agree what disinformation is.
This is-
You
well-
can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border?
We took a page from the military's playbook and built a portable solar power generator that can protect you and your.
And I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency. And based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Then you'll also have a peaceful environment.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate.
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was still
already
in
done.
Parliament, I.
Flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk.
Makers, as they say. There are other functions, however.
Plus, I'm very excited to bring you the author of Cobalt Red. This is a new bestseller book about cobalt mining in Congo.
Former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter joins us now. Scott, thanks for coming back to the show. Let's, I guess, start with Prigozhin and this this news of Wagner. Are they done?
Wagner, as a private military contractor capable of fielding a conventional military force, is finished. It's done. It's over.
And it seemed we saw videos of Russians apparently arm in arm with Wagner forces. There was a lot of apparent celebration. The West was saying, wow, he was greeted with open arms, Prigozhin. I saw a number of CNN headlines saying that it was a hero's welcome for Prigozhin when he went into Rostov-on-Don. And now charges are dropped against Prigozhin. So Will he be prosecuted in any way? Is he going to live out his days in Belarus? And what do you make of this Western narrative of sort of a hero's welcome for him?
Well, let's start with the hero's welcome. Rostov is a city.
All right. So sorry, folks. Let me mention a few things before we go. I'm just going to take maybe 30 seconds of your time. Now, so do you see mainstream media? Do you see America or UK, right? They are calling this Wagner group hero. So the question then becomes, why would they call this group hero when this group is the one in Ukraine fighting? Let's just say destroying. Why would they call this group hero? Was it something done behind the scene? Why would they call this group hero? It's like America calling ISIS or terrorist hero. Let that sink in. Let's continue. I'm just reminding you as we go on because I want you to see the picture as we go deeper.
City of 1 million people. Count the number of civilians you saw on the square welcoming Wagner. First of all, the vast majority of the civilians there were there out of curiosity. When Wagner first approached, there were no cheers. In fact, Wagner's forces were confronted over and over again by Russians saying, "What are you doing here? Why are you making this mess?" Wagner put people on the ground at gunpoint. Wagner, who has no legal authority whatsoever. People need to understand that. This is not a military unit. It's not a paramilitary unit. It's a private military contractor who has no legal authority to operate on Russian soil at all. So these are criminals in a Russian city bearing arms, seeking to take.
Now, first of all, look in there. Mainstream media say this group when they overtook Moscow, right? But you see people on the street taking picture. All right, there's a lady you saw while they're taking picture. Okay, and you see these guys walking. Now, what they're not telling you here is something happened. These guys have to retreat. And Putin, okay, let's go ahead.
Take control of the headquarters that is commanding the special military operation at a time when Russia is a life and death existential military struggle against Ukraine and the collective West. The people cheered when Wagner left. They cheered because there was no civil war. They thanked Wagner for making the right decision to get out of town. What those people didn't realize is that Rostov-on-Don was surrounded by 10 to 15,000 Chechen Akhmat special forces who had sent a message to Prigozhin that you're going to die in a matter of hours. That when Putin gives the green light, we will come in and we will kill you and we will kill all of your Wagner mercenaries. Prigozhin also received the same message from his commanders as they approached Moscow. They entered the Serpukov area and there were 2,500 Russian special forces lined up there, dug in. They were backed up by thousands more special forces who were outflanking the Wagner forces. And Wagner commanders came back and said, we're going to get into a fight. Now, here's another thing people don't realize. What is a basic combat load? That's what a soldier carries on him to engage in a fight. You know how quickly you fire through your basic combat load in a heavy firefight? Like that. Where's the resupply come? Wagner would have run out of ammunition in hours, and they would have all died. That was the reality. Prigozhin didn't negotiate anything. Prigozhin was told, leave. You're done. Unplugged. Get out of Russia, and Wagner is finished. And that's what we're seeing. So all this concept of a negotiated settlement, Prigozhin making a point, Wagner being treated as heroes. Wagner is a criminal entity. A criminal entity. 3/4 of Wagner refused to participate in this coup d'etat. This coup has been planned for months. Russia has known about it. Russia has been coordinating with the commanders of Wagner to avoid a civil war.
Now, again, the coup have been planned for months and Putin knew about it, right? Now, again, let's go to the $6.2 billion America just spent. Like I said, I'm not going to go in depth, but hey, I'm trying for you to understand something. All right, I'm not going in depth, but understand something. All right, just this year, from the beginning of January to June, in between there, $3.6 billion got missing from the Pentagon. IRS gave a report. So is the government of the United States going to pay that $3.2 billion? It got missing from the Pentagon. How will $3.6 billion get missing? So from last year to this year, 2022 to 2023, the United States has spent $6.2 billion in Ukraine. So, and then this coup have been playing months. Putin knew that coup was going to take place. Did the United States know? Did UK know? That's what we are here to uncover. Follow me. Let's go. This is WCC. I'm just reminding you, I'm not saying they spend the money because, hey, we have to be also mindful of what we say, but I'm just telling you, where did it go? Follow me.
To have them conform with Russian law, to have the Wagner fighters sign contracts binding them to the Ministry of Defense. So now that they have a legal status, to get the commanders to do the same thing, to end Prigozhin's billion-dollar money-making venture. People need to understand that Prigozhin is not a military commander. He is a businessman who makes.
All right, again, a private military who make money. They are not loyal military to say they are loyal to your country or they are loyal to the nation. These are prisoners. All right? So they are loyal to their money. Could it be some of the $6.2 billion went to these people because there's a coup that was planned here? Could it be that this group refused to go overthrow Putin or to go kill Putin? Because months back, it was said that Putin was being missed in a coup. He was being missed in a coup months back before. It was reported that he was being missed. Who tried to kill him and it makes him? Could it be that money was pumped into this private military because the other entity know that they are there to make money? That's how they make their money. And then what happened here? Putin knew that there was a coup being plotted against him. Putin decided to bring this Wagner group into the Federation. Listen to the narrative there. Could it be that Putin decided because there's a coup that people want to buy this group, people want to spend billions of dollars to this group. So Putin decided, okay, I'm not going to spend billion, but what I'm going to do, since they are spending a billion, I'm going to bring them into the Federation, where they will no longer be prisoner. They will be part of the Russian Federation. And the leader, he disagreed. The leader for the Wagner group disagreed because he don't want to be part of the Federation. He wants to be a private army to make his money. Let's continue here. Be with me.
Money off of slaughter and blood. Bakhmut, where 20,000 Wagner fighters died. People need to remember that. There is no wonderful formula for Wagner's success. They're not an elite fighting force. 30,000 of the 50,000 Wagner soldiers who fought in Bakhmut were criminals, convicts with 21 days training. You cannot become an elite fighting force with 21 days training. You were given 21 days training, basic small arms knowledge, basic maneuver, and told advance or die. That was it. If you survive, your conviction is swiped clean. These were fanatics who fought aggressively, but they're not elite. 20,000 of them died. These units suffered 60% casualties, and Prigozhin's lecturing people saying, we gave you a case study of how you should have advanced through. Prigozhin knows nothing of war. Again, he has no military experience whatsoever. Every operational and tactical decision is made by his commander's council, and this commander's council signed off on tactics that caused shock units to lose 60% casualties, 20,000 dead, and he's saying that the Russians are slaughtering their troops. If the Russian Ministry of Defense followed the Prigozhin model, 300,000 Russians would be dead, and they still would have only advanced a few kilometers. Prigozhin is insane, and that's what people need to understand. Wagner, they fought bravely, they fought heroically, but to call Wagner elite.
Here it is, the Vanish holster, the world's most comfortable holster. One thing to know is you don't need a belt with the Vanish holster.
No elite unit suffers 60% casualties. That's not elite. That's fanatical. And here's the other important thing. The Russian military did not want to fight the Battle of Bakhmut. Prigozhin entered that battle because he was in a very difficult situation. Russian law does not permit a private military army, which is what Wagner had become. It can't operate on Russian soil. So they were going to pause the battlefield, pull Wagner out, and reconcile this legality issue. Prigozhin realized the second they did that, he would lose his billion-dollar business. So he pushed into Bakhmut to keep the fight going, to compel the Russians to fight, sacrificing 20,000 men. Every soldier that died in Bakhmut, it's Prigozhin's fault. He murdered them as a business decision to compel the Ministry of Defense to give him the ammunition to create a precedent of supplying a private military contractor in violation of Russian law. And he continued to push that battle even when the Russian high command said, we don't.
Now you understand. This was one of the reasons they have to retreat, because they needed arm and ammunition. Because bear in mind, the United States, UK, and Germany, or the NATO nation, they are heavily supplying arm and ammunition to Ukraine. And this Russian group is asking Putin for weapons. Like he said, Putin does not want to fight. So, but now you see who is fighting. The Russian Federation have not yet taken part in the war. They have not been there. So now you see one of the reasons why they retreated. Because they needed ammunition and Putin is not giving it. And it could be there's a reason why Putin does not want to do it. Now, there's a private military group. Putin, I believe, does not want to empower these people. Because if Putin empower these people, the likelihood of coup might happen. Because what happened here is the Wagner group will not use Western weapon to go create proxy war. If they are caught, they will know that they betrayed. They will know that they betrayed their own people and they are being bought by the West. So Putin too is smart, because that's why he tried to bring them into the army. He told them to come into the army to be part of the Federation, and he said no. So if I want to bring you into the Federation and you said no, do you think I'm going to give you arm? I'm going to arm you? Why did you say no, you don't want to be part of the Federation? Knowing that you are fighting for me. Why do you want to remain private, knowing that you are fighting for the Russian? So now you understand why they retreated. Because they need an arm. Let's continue. One of the reasons. Another reason could be where they're being bought. Because billions of dollars, Western money have gone to Ukraine. In a recent time, in a short period of time. We're also going to see the reaction of the United States after the coup did not happen. What happened in Russia? Did Western money play part? Be with me. Let's continue.
Want this. He forced the Russian high command to divert forces from other areas of the front to protect the flanks of Wagner as they advanced. Thousands of Russians were wounded and killed because of Prigozhin. So this idea that Prigozhin is some sort of military genius who is in command of an elite fighting force that saved Russia is absurd in the extreme. I'm not denigrating the courage of the individual Wagner fighter or the tactical competency of their commanders. I'm telling you that Yevgeny Prigozhin is a psychopathic, mass murdering criminal, and he's alive today only because Vladimir Putin didn't want to start a civil war where Russians would end up killing Russians.
Fascinating. We had just a short time ago the question of whether or not Prigozhin was working alone in this coup, this march towards Moscow. Rostislav Ayshenko, political scientist, Russian political scientist, says it's not likely that he was working alone. The amount of organization in order to move on this would have required some kind of support from within Russia, perhaps from the capital, from the Kremlin in some capacity. Do you buy that analysis? Do you think he was working with other people, or he was working alone in this decision?
No, I mean, that's an absurdity, frankly speaking. Wagner had become a massive enterprise. Again, by the time they withdrew 25,000 troops, that's a significant force with tanks, artillery, aircraft. They didn't need the Kremlin's help or the military's help to plot a coup. The help that Prigozhin got was from his military command council, but here's the rub. See, Prigozhin's thinking about a coup had been known to everybody. Everybody. The CIA knew about it. We know this now because they admitted briefing the Gang of Eight in Congress about Prigozhin's coup, and they briefed them weeks ago, months ago.
So, did you hear that? The CIA knew about the coup in Congress. They briefed each other about it. They talked about it. They knew about coup that was to take place. Did Western money play part in here? The $6.2 billion, did it play part? Because this is a private military. And Putin smart. Putin said, or Putin believed that the only way I'm going to give you weapon unless you take an allegiance. And Putin told the Wagner group, the leader, they should take an allegiance to the oath of Russia. And they said no, they were not taking oath. So now you understand here. So there was a coup that was planned and discussed in Congress. They discussed it. There was a coup that was planned and they discussed it in Congress among each other. So now you understand why they called the group hero. When they were marching toward Moscow, they called it hero, right? Now, again, what I want to say here, let me say it before, maybe before I forget it. All of these also intertwined with Africa. Know this. Russia is having a huge influence in Africa through their same Russia missionary group. It is through this group that Putin is having a huge influence in Africa. And because of this, nations like Mali, Chad, Niger, okay, in that region are going against France, the European nation, and they are inviting the Wagner group to help alongside to fight the jihadi, which of course it is also affecting Western influence. So it could also be in order to defeat Putin, not just in Ukraine, because the West were fighting two war, or they are fighting two war with Russia in Ukraine and in Africa. So in order to defeat Putin or Russia in Africa, they have to defeat Putin in Ukraine. They have to go on the side of the Wagner group. If they can get those people, because in Africa, Putin does not have the Russian military. Putin does not have the Russian Federation. Like how in Africa they have specifically American military bases. Like the African, they are American military. Putin does not have it. So, in other words, if you can defeat, or if you can get on the side of the Wagner group here, because the commander here, if you can get the commander, then you can infiltrate the group in Africa. So, how could you do that? It's to spend money, folks. Let's continue. Be with me. Let's go along.
MI6 briefed the prime minister about the same thing. MI6 coordinated with the Ukrainian government, telling them to stop your offensive operations until Prigozhin's coup goes forward, because there's a chance there's going to be a civil war in Russia where they will remove forces from the battlefield, and then you can do your attack. Everybody was aware of this, including the Kremlin. But what the Kremlin was doing is they wanted to avoid a civil war. They wanted to avoid a situation where they had to go in and forcibly disarm 25,000 Wagner soldiers. So they reached out to the commanders. Prigozhin could not have done this without the commanders' help within Wagner. That's the reality. And as we found out, 4 out of the 5 members of the command council refused to help Prigozhin. Only one helped him, took his troops. But the rest of Wagner stayed in the barracks, refused to participate. And even the troops that went in, the majority of them were misled. They were told that they were going to secure the border against Ukrainian attacks. Once they arrived, they realized that they had been misled, and half of Wagner wasn't going to participate in any fighting no matter what. Half of the Wagner troops that were there, because they were misled. People confronted Prigozhin while he was in Rostov, Wagner people saying, "What the hell are you doing?" Only the fanatics went forward to Moscow. And what the Russians did there, the Russian government did, is they allowed them through because they didn't want to start a civil war, but they created the final barrier at Serpukhov. They got Akhmat to surround Rostov, and then the phone call was made to Prigozhin, "We're about to kill everybody. Is this what you want?" Prigozhin was hoping, and I believe he was told by Russian oligarchs and Russian exiles who are controlled by British intelligence. We know there was connectivity between Prigozhin and Khodorkovsky, who's a British MI6-controlled oligarch in London. See, Prigozhin had red flags all over the place. He had failed businesses. The only viable business he had left was Wagner. He makes billions of dollars off of this mercenary bloodlust, sacrificing his soldiers. He makes money off of that. And he didn't want to lose this. And so he was told that if you move, there are people in Moscow who will support you. He would led himself to believe that the military bought into his anti-Shoigu, anti-Gerasimov propaganda, that once he made the move, that the military would rally around him. He was told that politicians would leave Putin, surround him. So he drove towards Moscow, and none of that happened. None of that happened. Everybody rallied around Vladimir Putin. And in the end, Prigozhin was alone. His troops were scared. and they recognized that they were all going to die. And that's why this deal was cut. But Prigozhin had no help from within Russia. He had a lot of help from outside of Russia, which makes him a traitor.
Now you heard that. He had a lot of help from outside Russia, which made him a traitor. Now you understand why in the United States Congress, they were aware of the coup d'etat. Did part of the 6.2 billion go towards this private military? Because the United States is fighting two different wars here. War in Africa with Russia and war in Ukraine. Because it's not just about defeating Russia in Ukraine. It's also about defeating Russia and Ukraine in Africa. Because through that missionary group, Russia is having huge influence in Africa. And these colonizers, they don't want competition. They don't want another superpower to come and compete with them. So now you see it. Now you see why Putin told this private military group, I'm not going to supply you weapons unless you take an oath to the Russian Federation. And they said no. Let's continue to the next part. Follow me. This is WCC. All right. The next part here is also going to give you an evidence to what we just saw here, because I'm not going to show one video, okay? Another interpretation by another person, just another evidence, okay, of why it happened. And then from there, I'm going to show you a video of the reaction of America after the coup failed. What did they do to the private military group? Look, folks. All right, let's continue.
Well, what did a failed coup attempt in Russia over the weekend reveal about the war in Ukraine, about Western intentions, about Western media bias, and the like? For that, I want to bring in Colonel Douglas Macgregor to get an after-action report, if you will, of this crazy weekend that we had. Colonel, it's good to see you here on such a big news week and a big news story. Good to see you.
Absolutely.
So first, I want to put up these live maps. These are, I think, really helpful for our audience who might not be familiar of what this contested territory is. The area that has voted, of course, to become part of Russia, the Donbass, what was Eastern Ukraine. Here's the Russian live battle map. And you can see the line here. And then looks a little different than the Ukraine live battle map. So that no one can accuse us of bias here. These are the two different maps, one from the Russian side, one from the Ukrainian side of these live view maps of the battle right now. And over the weekend, the New York Times basically said, "Wow, this didn't change the war at all. In fact, the West was the Ukraine failed to exploit this coup this weekend. That there was nothing they could do. They failed to exploit this massive coup," which was a kind of a crazy admission from the New York Times. But just based on this battle lines, what is your assessment of where things stand right now after this coup this weekend?
If you look at the Russian map, you'll see that there are advances on the northeast side if you just sort of regard the area under Russian control as a large banana that sort of runs in that form, the Russians have made progress towards Kharkov. These have been limited offensives, I think, to gain control of road nets and terrain that will facilitate a rapid offensive, which is to follow. There have been other areas where there have been some advances as well. The Ukrainians don't show as much of that for obvious reasons. The Ukrainian forces are, in fact, on the verge of collapse. They are totally demoralized. They've experienced large numbers of desertions to the Russian side and from the battlefield in general. People are going out of their way to avoid military service of any kind in Ukraine. So the Zelensky regime is in a lot of trouble. And we need to talk about that, because to some extent, that explains why Prigozhin behaved the way he did. And if you want to go there, we can go there now, or we can continue to gaze at the map.
No, I just wanted to kind of put in context when I think people don't often understand that this portion of former Eastern Ukraine is now Russia and voted overwhelmingly to become part of Russia. And this is the area where there's sort of a tit for tat back and forth right now along this line. And this is the area where the Wagner forces were positioned, right? This was
yes. Yeah.
And so Prigozhin then, of course, moves and makes this move over the weekend. Let's dive into exactly why he would have done this, given this timeline. What's your assessment of that?
Well, Prigozhin is a complex figure. Certain things need to be understood up front about him and Wagner. First, Americans need to understand that the Wagner Group is really very analogous to the French Foreign Legion. If you're looking for an entity in the history of the French Republic that has fought harder than anyone else for France in both world wars and between the wars all over the world, it's the French Foreign Legion. I would say that you could say the same thing about the Wagner Group. Whatever their origins, and they're certainly a creature to some extent of Russian intelligence for use overseas, but they have fought in this war tirelessly to advance the Russian cause, and they've taken the casualties to prove it. So they are enormously popular with the Russian people. The Russian people love Wagner, and the Russian people overwhelmingly like Prigozhin. Prigozhin's kind of an unattractive character to us in the West. He's very foul. He makes outrageous statements. He exaggerates, and he has exaggerated his own importance on more than one occasion. He is not a professional soldier, but he is seen as a voice that the Russian people strongly support because of his ferocious determination to fight and win this war. And I think it has to be understood that the Russian people, large numbers of people in the Russian military establishment, are very frustrated with Putin's exercise of considerable restraint. We in the West don't seem to understand that Putin has moved very cautiously and deliberately throughout this war. He doesn't want to provoke NATO intervention. He wants to avoid a war with the United States. And as a result, each of the gains that the Russians have made have been quite limited and incremental. And people are fed up with it. You've got a number of senior officers in the Russian military who don't like it. So when you look at the problems that Prigozhin has had with the Russian high command, he's been angry because he said he didn't get enough ammunition, angry because he didn't think his soldiers were being adequate.
Again, you hear it from another part again, another pricing. All right? That the amount of billion-dollar taxpayer money America has spent, Putin is not even doing nothing. The amount of taxpayer money America has spent, Putin is not really fighting a war. So you hear it right there. Okay? Putin is not putting in resources. He has not even sent his military. So all the American ammunition that have been tested, the Russians have not yet even tested their weapon. Putin want peace. But do you see how mainstream media make Putin as the gorilla in the house? Now, this is not to say I'm speaking for Putin or I'm speaking against any, but I mean, we are speaking the obvious here. We are just also interpreting what somebody is saying. understanding what is going on. Where they have verified Putin as the devil, the demon, the warmonger. But do you see here?
Really supported. Eventually, Putin intervened. General Surovikin was told, look, you've got to manage this. They're very good troops. Make sure he gets what he needs. And Surovikin is very sympathetic to Prigozhin and his larger views, I think. But Prigozhin decided it wasn't working and it wasn't enough. And I also think he knows he's not a professional soldier, so his ability beyond speaking publicly is limited. And I think he decided, I've got to get President Putin's attention. He needs to understand that the senior ranks need to be shaken up, that we need people with fire in the belly who want to go forward and crush the Ukrainians and be done with it. And so I think he went down to Rostov, where, of course, there was no fighting. If you look at the shots that were made of his discussion in the garden with the deputy chief of staff of the Russian general staff, they were very amicable. And I think these few troops that he sent towards Moscow were not headed there to displace Putin at all. They were there to try and get his attention, deliver the message that we want to fight, we want to end this war, and we want better leadership from the military, not from President Putin. Well, this whole thing got out of control. It looked like something it wasn't. The West celebrated, thinking, oh, finally, somebody's standing up to the evil Putin. It's a lot of nonsense. They're all very supportive of President Putin. And when it became clear what had happened, Lukashenko, who has known Prigozhin for at least 20 years, talked to President Putin, who also knows Prigozhin. He understands what we've discussed. President Putin was furious. He mobilized 30,000 troops in Moscow. He was ready to go down and crush all of this. When the Russian troops that had gone up there from Wagner, or the Wagner Foreign Legion, if you will, put its arms down immediately because they didn't want to kill Russians. The Russians don't want to kill them. So it all kind of fizzled quickly, as most of us thought that it would. But this is not somebody that you simply stand up against the wall and shoot. This is someone who is popular in Russia. He expresses a point of view that's not necessarily anti-Putin at all, but is very definitely sympathetic to the larger cause of let's end this war and get rid of these fascists that are sitting in Kiev. And so you're not going to shoot him. Lukashenko says, look, let me bring him up to Belarusia. I'll keep him under wraps till this thing is over. And I think that's effectively what's happened. Everybody has effectively been pardoned. Nobody's going back to prison. Nobody's going to be executed at this stage. Now, I do think that the Wagner group will see some of its forces broken up, not disbanded, but in smaller bites. 5,000, 4,000 troops moved into other areas in the future. And remember that this insistence by Prigozhin that they had been attacked by Russian forces was entirely nonsense. It was totally wrong. It never happened. That was his pretext to get people to react the way they did. So it's all over. But I do think that President Putin got the message. And I would look for some shakeups in the near future in the Russian high command. And I would be very surprised if we do not see an offensive begin soon. Because frankly, there's nothing out there to stand up to the Russian offensive. And remember, the Russians have never, ever unleashed the full might of their force.
Right.
This has been a limited war from the beginning because Putin.
So you heard that, right? The Russians have never done that. So the Russians been relaxing. They never been doing anything. You know, while America is pushing the war, make sure that proxy war going. Because if Russia succeed in Ukraine, Russia succeed in Africa. So the whole point here as well, Ukraine is being used as a nation of proxy war to defeat Russia also in Africa. Because if they can defeat Russia in Ukraine, in the mind of America and Europe, the African leaders will turn away from Russia. They will come back to their colonial master because in their mind, the African nation are still weak or will still be weak, and they will still need military support. And then what happened? They will now come back to their colonial master to beg them. So Ukraine is also taking a hit to defeat Russia in Africa. Now, I'm not going to play the whole video so that, because we're running out of time, let me play another video so that I can do the connection and see what I'm saying here. So what's going on in Ukraine is not just about Russia and Ukraine. It's about the African continent. Because the colonial master feel that they are losing West Africa. In fact, they are losing Africa. Because it started with one nation, Mali. And now it's spreading. Where nobody wants a colonial master on the African continent again. They are kicking them out. In fact, just 2 days ago, in Mali, finally they have decided to kick out the United Nations. They told the UN to finally leave the country. United Nations, they told them to leave, to pack their sarcophagus and leave. They don't need them. So that's not something you play for away. These people are going to fight to the end. So they know they're testing Russia, but Russia is just relaxing and not doing nothing. So it's not just about fighting Russia or they want to fight Ukraine. No, it's also to defeat Russia in Africa, because they can't go fight on the African continent. But if they can defeat Russia and Russia is scratched, then Russia will not have any military power in Africa. Let's continue. I'm going to take this out so that we can get to the next video. So I'm going to take this out. But we get a message already, right? So let's get to the next one and see about Africa. So Africa also play part in this whole thing here. Africa play part. Because they don't want to lose the resources. But hold on to the colonial master. What you whip, you will sow. We don't need you. We don't care. Now, let's see this. I'm not going to play the whole video, but I'm going to bring you something so that you can see. After the coup failed, the same people they call a hero, after the coup failed, listen to what they did. So they thought this group was going to go against Russia. Let's see here. Let's see here what it did after the group failed. So let's see how the United States got angry because they thought a coup was going to work. And the coup did not work.
Close ties to the Wagner mercenary group. General Sergei Surovikin was known to have a good relationship with Yevgeny Prigozhin, who led Wagner's aborted mutiny last weekend. Surovikin was nicknamed General Armageddon because of his bombardment tactics in the Syrian conflict. He's not been seen since Saturday's armed revolt. The Moscow Times quoted a source saying apparently he, Surovikin, chose Prigozhin's side during the uprising. Meanwhile, in Belarus, where Wagner Group leader Prigozhin is apparently now exiled, the New York Times is reporting on construction of a new military base for Wagner fighters who were given the option of relocating to Belarus after the group's failed uprising. Satellite images by Planet Labs show the construction about 80 miles from the Belarusian capital of Minsk and about 13 miles from a town with multiple.
Firstly, let me make a quick comment here. You know, we started with a video where we said Mother Nature is taking part, right? We love this. If you went on the African continent and created jihadi and created terrorists, yes, terrorists will also be created in your place, in your region. And that's what's going to happen now. Oh, now they are using a satellite to see now new base is being created, right? For these soldiers. Yes. And nothing African people, you put African people through, you put African nation through. You guys will go through it. One who led by the sword, one who killed by shall be killed by the sword as well. You kill by the sword, you will be killed by the sword. You created jihadi, terrorists on the African continent, where no peace, proxy war going to be in your region as well now. You created ISIS. Taliban is going to be created in your area now. I'm glad you have satellite to detect. So when we speak these things, and then you so-called United Nations come and say it's hate speech. What happened? You know, this is a mathematical equation. What you do on the left-hand side, you got to do it on the right-hand side. I love this. What you do on the right-hand side, you got to do it on the left-hand side. That's a mathematical equation. You cannot cheat. You can cheat. So we love this. So when we speak this, then you say a hate speech. You do the same thing to other places in the world. Now it happened to you. Then we talk about it. We say it's good because we want you to experience it. You kill by the sword, you should be killed by the sword. Let's continue here.
Multiple military facilities. This comes as the Biden administration's imposed a new sanctions on companies accused of profiting from the activities of the Wagner Group in Afrika. The Treasury Department says the sanctions will punish 4 companies based in Russia, the United Arab Emirates, and the Central African Republic that extract gold, diamonds, and other minerals to help fund the mercenary force. The sanctions were announced after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Monday Wagner mercenaries will not be withdrawn from Africa following last weekend's mutiny.
So, I'm going to take this video out. But now you see it, right? You heard it. After the coup failed, they put sanction on them. And then who is the United States to talk about African resources? So now you understand. Now you see the puzzle. Now you understand the puzzle. You understand the puzzle, right? You understand what's going on now. Why they want Russia to be defeated? Because of this missionary group in Africa. Now you understand. They talk about our diamond, our gold, our mineral resources, right? It is not about the life of Africans. Africans are dying. So we have this missionary in Africa helping African armies to fight the so-called terrorists supported by Western army nation, and then you put sanction on them, and then come out to say you want to talk about LGBT. These are the same thing we're talking about. We have situation on the African continent that you need to help us with. And you leave it. And then you're talking about LGBT. When Africans are dying in their numbers, when this missionary group on the African continent helping African military, giving ammunition to African military to help fight the jihadi, the terrorists supported by Western support. And then you put sanction on them. So are you there for Africans, or are you there to destabilize the African continent to continue to loot their resources? Now, let's see what we're talking about here. Let's take this out. Now you see the put sanction on it, right? Because the coup failed. If the coup was not going to fail, it was not going to put sanction on them. Because they know Putin was defeated, then Putin will be defeated absolutely on the African continent. This is not to say we are speaking in favor of Putin and speaking against anybody. We are pro-African and we are pro-Black and we are speaking for Black and we are unapologetic when we are speaking for Black people and Black interests and African interests and for the African continent to be specific and for the African nation to be specific. We are unapologetic. If you think we are speaking against it, then so be it. Now, let's see the next video here and see what's going on the African continent. Why they put sanctions on these people? The thing they're doing in Ukraine, you think it's about Ukraine? They are using Ukraine as a scapegoat because they are not going specifically to go to Russia to go fight Russia because they know if they do that, Russia will come to US or will go to UK to go fight them. So they will create a lane where they will go and fight. But part of this fighting they are doing in Russia, I mean in Ukraine against Russia, is also about the African continent. Watch the next video. Follow me.
Latest Africa news. Russian Foreign Ministry issues statement that Wagner's continued presence in Africa is up to African countries to decide. The paramilitary group Wagner will continue to operate in Mali and the Central African Republic, the head of Russian diplomacy assured us on Monday, adding that the organization's rebellion in Russia will not affect relations between Moscow and its allies. Wagner members are currently working in Mali and the Central African Republic as instructors. This work will of course continue, said Sergei Lavrov in an interview. The Russian minister said that Europe and France, having abandoned the Central African Republic and Mali, these countries had turned to Russia and Wagner to provide military instructors and ensure the security of their leaders, Lavrov added. Mr. Lavrov also took the view that the armed rebellion of Wagner's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, and his men deployed in Ukraine would change nothing in Russia's relations with its allies. There have been many calls from foreign partners to President Vladimir Putin to express words of support, he said. For the West, Wagner is an instrument of Russian influence, designed to advance Moscow's interests and compete with those of the West in Africa. But as of now, the West is still very confused with the current situation between Wagner and the Russian government. For some African leaders, especially Central African Republic President Faustin Archange Touadera, it's another story. He owes his life to Wagner mercenaries after they put down an attempted coup in 2020 that some claimed was sponsored by France. Fidela Guanjica, a top advisor to Touadera, said Wagner's instructors came with Russia's blessing. The now disgraced Russian paramilitary company is increasingly active in Africa, particularly in Mali, where the military employs these mercenaries, and has sided diplomatically with Russia since the deterioration of its relations with France. So, what is Wagner's future in Africa?
So, that's why the West, America, UK, that's one of the reasons they are fighting Russia. Because they can't stop Africans. They can't stop. We are not in a colonial time where we have to ask our colonial master, who should we make business with? We are not in those time again. So they have seen over the year how we have thrown them out. When we say get out, we mean get out. So they have seen it. So technically, they are fighting Russia. And the reason why they have not yet, start to fight China, China have not yet carried on like military, stuff like Russia doing it, helping, to fight the so-called jihadi or the so-called terrorists. China have not yet. But the moment China began to do that, to get African power, they're going to go against China too. That's why they try to use Taiwan. But they pull back, they pause back. They said that's not the time to pull the trigger. But that's what's going on. Okay? Let's watch another video and see for maybe better clarity. Let's see another thing here for better clarity.
Community, referring to it as a destabilizing force. Here is your latest Africa news. After facing rejection from Russia to attend this year's BRICS meeting in Africa, French President Emmanuel Macron criticized Russia's presence on the African continent during the new Global Financing Pact summit just held in Paris. Macron stated that Moscow's influence in the region does not benefit the international community, referring to it as a destabilizing force in Africa through the utilization of private militias that prey on and commit abuses against civilian populations. He accused Russia of destabilizing Africa through the deployment of the private military group Wagner. The Kremlin swiftly dismissed President Macron's allegations, denying that Russia is a destabilizing force in Africa. This accusation came as a surprise to many in Africa, particularly considering France's very destabilizing actions in Africa. At present, 14 African countries are forced by France, through the Colonial Pact, to deposit 85% of their reserves in the Central Bank of France, which is under the control of the French Ministry of Finance. Additionally, Togo and approximately 13 other African countries still have outstanding colonial debts to France as of 2023. African leaders who refuse or challenge this agreement often find themselves as victims of coup d'etat. The lack of these resources on the continent leads to massive poverty and suffering in the so-called Francafrique countries. Even the European Union denounces such neo-colonial policies today, yet France remains unwilling to abandon this colonial system that exploits approximately $500 billion from Africa each year. Furthermore, France currently maintains around 3,000 troops in Africa, supposedly to combat terrorism in the Sahel. This is down from over 5,000 troops 2 years ago, since anti-French sentiment started growing. In response, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov emphasized that Russia is developing friendly, constructive relations based on mutual respect and concern for each other's problems. Moscow has gained influence in recent years in regions where France had traditionally held sway for centuries, including Burkina Faso, the Central African Republic, and Mali. France's influence has diminished due to the perceived inability of French troops to quell violence perpetrated by armed groups in these countries, leading to an increase in anti-French sentiment in the former French colonies. This situation has sparked a war of words between Moscow and Paris in recent years. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, also expressed confusion regarding Macron's attempt to secure a BRICS invitation from South Africa, stating, "We honestly don't know how Macron could participate in the summit, as whom or for what purpose. We don't have such information." Let us know in the comments.
So, another follow reason, right? You see that, and you see the frustration of Emmanuel Macron. And he is not the only person frustrated. The United States too is frustrated. But guess what? The United States, UK, they are still acting that they are strong. But you know why Emmanuel Macron is frustrated? Because Emmanuel Macron knows every year $500 billion in taxes come from those francophone nation go to France in the French bank. And since 2020, France have been under severe protests. As we speak, Emmanuel Macron was to attend a European summit in UK. He had to abandon it to go back to France because of a protest. And that protest has escalated until right now, I think it's in Switzerland. I think so, yeah, if I can get the name right. So it have crossed since 2020. And do you know what part of that protest? Even though the recent one, they said, was led to a 17-year-old boy being killed by police, but it is also due to hardship. Because African nations pull back. They are holding back and they are telling France, get out. So those money, those finances are not going in to the bank of France. So the economy is stuck. So they are experiencing what they call third world country, which of course, two of their former presidents have said it. France, it is France because of Africa, because they are looting African resources and African labor. So the day African nation turn back towards France or turn their back towards France, France will be a third world country. And that is what happening. Poverty is knocking at France's door. They can no longer provide for their citizens. But let's continue here from the United States. So maybe that will be the last video and we'll call it for the day. So let's see the frustration of the US. It's not about Africa people. I mean, it's not about African people. It's about African resources. So we don't care even about the United States. We don't care about them. Hold on.
That the U.S. was not involved, and that with President Biden, the Vice President, and other principals to discuss the situation in Russia. Throughout the day on Saturday, Secretary Austin received regular updates from senior civilian and military officials at the Pentagon. He also actively engaged key allies and partners to share information on the developments taking place in Russia and made clear that the U.S. was not involved and that we would not get involved in these events. And as you've heard the White House and State Department say, we view the security situation in Russia as an internal Russian matter. During his calls, Secretary Austin also reiterated that support by the United States for Ukraine will not change, and that remains our focus. And toward that end, the Department of Defense announced earlier today additional security assistance to meet Ukraine's critical security and defense needs. This is the 41st drawdown of equipment from DoD inventories for Ukraine since August 2021 and includes key capabilities to support Ukraine's air defense requirements, as well as additional armored vehicles, anti-armor systems, munitions, and other equipment valued up to $500 million to help Ukraine defend their nation and take.
So now you hear that additional after $6.2 billion. This video just came out 2 days ago, right? So after $6.2 billion being spent, they are talking about another $5 million to spend. And you see what they're saying? They are saying the war is not going to end. So now you see, this is not Putin, right? They are saying the war is not going to end because the coup failed. Because the agenda there, the agenda here is not about Ukraine becoming part of NATO. Yes, it could be one, but that's not just the sole agenda. Because they are seeing over the years on the African continent how nations have gone in for the support of Russian military or how to call it Russian military support. Unlike the United States, they do not support African nations militarily. But they go there lying to African leaders of bringing African. They go there, they lie to African leaders to come and create United States base so that they can help fight African, so that they can help fight terrorists, they can help fight jihadi. But African people die every day on the African continent with the huge presence of American military. First of all, let me make this clear. America have made it clear before, after Black Hawk down in Somalia, they say no American military will die for any African again. You so-called African, go do your research. After tore Black Hawk down, Somalia. They made it clear. Because in our fight, American soldiers die. They die until they have to call in UN. If not, none of them are going to live. They were going to massacre all of them. They have to call on UN before UN came in to rescue the rest of the wounded soldier and the rest of the soldier that could live. So after that, George Bush made it clear, the senior one, that no American soldier will die for any African again on the African continent. That is there in their memo. That is there in their policy. Then how can these people come to you on the African continent to tell you they want to come and create base to help fight for African life? Do you believe that? Why can't they go to DRC to fight? Oh, okay. The recent ones today, why can't they go there to go fight? Oh, okay. Why can't they go to Mali? Oh, okay, no. Why can't they go to Niger? Oh, I'm going to keep calling. Why can't they go to Chad? And then let's go on. Why can't you go fight? But you have these foreign military bases in Africa that are supporting and make it easy for them to support the terrorists, the jihadi. And make it easy for them to support the terrorists. And make it easy for them to create proxy war. And make it easy for them. Why would the United States put sanction on Russian military or private military helping Africa to fight jihadi, to fight terrorists? Why would you put sanction on them when they are fighting alongside with Africans to fight the terrorists that you say you are on the African continent to help the African to fight terrorists? Why would you put sanction on them? African leaders, African people, do you understand? American military need to leave the African continent. Africa should leave. If any military, be it whosoever, we don't care, as long as you are on the African continent and you are not helping African people to fight a so-called jihadi or terrorists created by the same West, you should leave. We don't need you on the African continent. You are part of the problem. In fact, you are worse than the terrorists. If Africa is on the African continent, because it was created, that's how it was created for. That's what they told African people. So if you are on the African continent and you cannot help African to fight the terrorists or the jihadi, you are worse than the terrorists. You are worse than the jihadi. You should leave the African continent. And those that want to help African, let them be there. Let's continue.
Back sovereign territory. And as we have since the beginning of Russia's illegal and unprovoked invasion, the U.S. will continue to work with our allies and partners to provide Ukraine with capabilities to meet its immediate battlefield needs and longer-term security assistance requirements. Additional details regarding the PDA are currently available on the DoD website. Separately, Secretary Austin also spoke on the phone today with Qatar Minister of State for Defense Affairs, His Excellency Dr. Khalid bin Mohammed Al Attiyah, to reaffirm the strength.
All right, let me make a quick comment here. I'm glad he mentioned Qatar. Let's go back to the LGBTQ because we'll keep talking about it. Because as long the United Nations have put her up dirty mouth in this to say the creating hate speech policy, right? Just because Africans are talking, now they should create more hate speech policy because that's the time we come and talk. I'm glad the Pentagon mentioned Qatar about business. United Nations, Qatar is the nation that have one of the worst anti-gay policy in the world. But you are here standing making a damn business with Qatar. Why can't you go to the Qatari and tell them you are violating human rights? But let's go to the African nation. You refuse to be independent. You refuse to stay on your own. You refuse to tell your citizens, you know what? We Africans, we must strive from now on by ourselves and hold our bootstrap and move. We don't have to be like America right away, but we can do it. Because after all, that is seeing black people that be America. After all, that is seeing black people that make America the way it is. So if we make America the way it is, we can make Africa. If we make Europe the way it is, we can make Africa. These damn people want our resources. Can't you get it? Yes, I will say that today. Damn people.
Of the U.S.-Qatar Defense Partnership and U.S. commitment to continued security cooperation in the interests of peace and stability. Secretary Austin thanked the minister for Qatar's continued support for regional stability and security and for Qatar's continued hosting of U.S. forces at AUMD Air Base. Readout of the call will be posted on the DoD website this afternoon. Tomorrow, Secretary Austin will welcome Germany's Federal Minister of Defense, Boris Pistorius, for a bilateral meeting here at the Pentagon. The leaders are expected to discuss what implications are for what we saw happen over the weekend as it pertains to Wagner Strait. An acceleration, right? I mean, originally when we had announced the M1A2 variant, we were looking at a longer timeline. So by going this route with the M1A1, refurbishing them, putting them into a variant that will meet Ukraine's battlefield needs, this was already an acceleration of the process. And then by doing the training concurrently with some training tanks, the idea is that when those tanks are refurbished, when the training is complete, the maintainers are trained, we can marry them up and get them into Ukraine sooner rather than later.
One more quick question. What's the status of the PDA for Taiwan that the secretary alluded to like a month ago that you were still working on?
Yeah. So I don't have an update to provide at this time in terms of the timing. Again, as you highlighted, the secretary did indicate that that's something that we are working towards, but I'm not going to put a timeline on today.
Or is it still in the discussion phase?
I don't want to speculate from the podium here. We'll keep you posted. Thank you very much. Let me go back here to Ro.
Yeah, thank you very much. One question from Taiwan. Last week, the U.S. National Security Council transited the Taiwan Strait a day after Secretary Blinken's visit to Beijing. I wonder why the U.S. deployed a U.S. Coast Guard ship instead of destroyer or cruiser at this time.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ro. So first of all, over the years, we've deployed a variety of capabilities through the Strait and throughout the Indo-Pacific to demonstrate the capabilities that we have. The most important aspect of any vessel is the fact that it's carrying the American flag. Okay, so I don't know that I would read into the particular type of platform provide. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much, General. According to the Japanese government, US and Japan hold extended deterrence dialogue, EDD.
Go back to the situation in Russia and noting that you refer to it as an internal affair. However, the Pentagon has to deal with the situation and make assessments and maybe prepare some scenarios. This is what the president said. In dealing with this internal affair, how are you describing it? Is it a mutiny? Is it rebellion? Is it a coup d'etat? When you look at it, what is this?
Yeah, thanks, Fadi. I'll leave it to you to come up with what characterization you want to. Obviously, we monitored the events there, but as far as the internal.
You see, right? It's a straightforward question. Is it a coup d'etat? Yes or no? Yes. No, it was not a coup d'etat. Why are you saying you leaving it to him? Like leaving it to who? It's a straightforward question. Was it a coup d'etat? Yes or no? In which, of course, you guys knew about it months before. I asked about Africa and he keep dodging it, right? I don't know if I can find that part, but if I can, then we'll just leave it and go, because he don't want to talk about it, because if he talk about it, he'll be like cracking a lot of stuff. He tried to dodge the question. Yeah, but I didn't really mark the number, so I don't know if I can get it. If
Thank you, General. My question is about child soldiers. The United Nations just released its report about children and armed conflict, which shows violations against children. So, according to this report, a total of 1,696 children were verified as recruited and used by Syrian Democratic Forces. General Guterres made a statement that he is deeply concerned by the increase in verified cases of child recruitment and
Baghdad and most of Syria, and talk about human rights violations. We can go ahead and talk about that. But in the meantime, haven't seen the report, so can't comment on it. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
all right, so you see another thing again, right? They took human right to the Middle East, to Baghdad, and he knew that they were the cause of what is going on in the Middle East. And now they asked him about child soldier and all of those things going on there. He don't want to talk about it. He said he have not yet read a report. So we will leave it just like that, because he knew where the question was going. Because he knew the question to him is, don't you know that the United States is the biggest violator of human rights? When you went to the Middle East, you said weapon of mass destruction, you bomb and loot and steal. So he don't want to talk about it. He said, no, let's leave it there. I have not yet read a report. You don't have to read a report to understand what is going on there. You know, you work at the Pentagon and you say you have not yet read a report. You work at the Pentagon, where decisions come from, where decisions are being made, where orders are being made and passed down, and you say you don't know. Do you see, when these people talk about human rights, we need to question them? So he knew where it was going. The Pentagon, and then you say you don't know? We've been here for so long. There was a question I asked about Africa, about the same Wagner group. But he tried to dodge it. He didn't answer it. So is there? I posted a link so you can, because it's about 32 minutes. So we've been here for so long, we can't actually finish it. I know I hold you guys for so long, so we gotta go. But that's today's message, and that's what we have today. And it was Lee. Yeah, Lee, thanks for asking a question about the Wagner group last week. That's why we are revolutionary. We are here to learn. We are still learning as well. So encourage us to go and do more research and put pieces of information together and try to analyze it. Thank you for asking that question. But we will keep following this story, as it uncovers. So we'll keep following it. So thank you all for being here. Share the live so that other people can also see, like, and subscribe to it as well. And I will see you all Saturday. I believe we're going to be on this coming Saturday. We couldn't do it yesterday because Brother Nkima had to be in New York. I think New York or Atlanta. Yeah, one of them. I think they had I think back to Black Correlation, or I think the African Socialist Party. They were having an event there with the chairman. So he was there. I saw him live. I also watched it. I saw him there. So we were unable to do it yesterday. So Saturday, this coming Saturday, I believe, we're gonna be here, and then I will also see you all on Sunday. Sorry, I will see you Saturday and Sunday. All right, peace.